In the grim darkness of the far future, there is only war.
Across 1,000,000 worlds, humanity clings to survival through faith, firepower, and fanaticism. The Imperium has cataloged every Xenos threat, documented every heresy, and purged every abomination that dared challenge mankind's dominion. Yet for all their 10,000 years of bloodshed and vigilance, they were utterly unprepared for the moment a teenage boy fell screaming from the stars, wearing a watch that could rewrite reality itself. The green flash came first. Orbital auger stations above Armageddon registered the anomaly at 347 Imperial Standard. A breach in real space that matched no known warp signature, no Xenos vessel profile, no recorded phenomenon in the Administratum's endless archives. It burned emerald against the black, a star being born and dying in the same instant. And then something plummeted toward the hive world's surface, trailing fire and impossible light. In the command cathedral of Hive Acheron, Planetary Governor Maltheus received the Vox transmission with growing dread. "My lord, the object's trajectory indicates impact in Sector 7 Gamma, the Underhive." "Exterminatus protocol," his aide whispered. Maltheus hesitated. Armageddon had endured orc invasions, chaos incursions, and the wrath of Angron himself. They did not panic at every falling star. "Deploy reconnaissance servitors. I want to know what this is before we waste a cyclonic torpedo on debris." What fell into the toxic sprawl of Armageddon's Underhive was not debris. Ben Tennyson hit the rusted metal platforms 30 meters below hive bottom with enough force to crater the corroded steel. His vision swam. His lungs burned with chemical-laced air, and every bone in his body screamed that he should be dead. He wasn't. The Omnitrix had saved him, barely. Green energy still flickered across his skin, the watch on his wrist pulsing erratically like a failing heart. "Okay," Ben groaned, pushing himself to his knees. "Okay, that was... Where am I?" The Underhive answered with silence, broken only by the drip of toxic runoff and the distant clang of machinery. Darkness pressed in from all sides, illuminated only by sickly bioluminescent fungi clinging to the walls and the occasional spark from exposed wiring. The air tasted of rust, promethium fumes, and something else. Something rotten that made Ben's stomach clench. He'd been on the plumber's ship Resolute, tracking a spatial anomaly near Earth's moon. The sensors had detected something impossible. Energy readings that shouldn't exist. A tear in reality that pulsed with colors his eyes couldn't properly process. Ben had reached for the Omnitrix, intending to go upgrade and interface with the ship's systems for a better scan. Then the tear had looked at him. He remembered screaming. Remembered the Omnitrix burning hot against his wrist as it tried to analyze what it was seeing. Remembered reality folding inside out as something vast and hungry and utterly wrong reached through the breach and pulled. "Stable now," Ben muttered, checking the Omnitrix's display. The hourglass symbol flickered between green and a disturbing purple he'd never seen before. Error codes scrolled across the interface in languages that weren't in the database. "That's not good." A sound echoed through the Underhive. Footsteps. Voices speaking a language Ben's universal translator struggled to parse. Harsh, guttural Gothic mixed with low hive cant. He pressed against a support pillar, heart hammering, as figures emerged from the darkness. 3 men, if they could still be called that. One was more metal than flesh, cables and augmetics replacing what disease or injury had claimed. Another bore ritual scarification across his bare chest, symbols that hurt to look at directly. The third carried a crude auto pistol and wore the tattered remains of what might have once been a uniform. They hadn't seen Ben yet. They were arguing, gesturing toward the crater where he'd landed. "Valuable," the augmented one rasped through a mechanical Vox grill. "Tech. Worth credits to right buyer." "Cursed," the scarified man hissed. "Fell from skyhole, warp touched, should burn it." "Should take it," the one with the gun decided. Boss Vrecker decides what burns. They approached the crater cautiously, weapons drawn. Ben's mind raced. He didn't know where he was, didn't understand what had happened, but he recognized desperation and violence in any universe. These weren't heroes, but they weren't necessarily villains either. They looked half-starved, equipped with salvaged gear, survivors in a place that didn't forgive weakness. The Omnitrix pulsed. Ben glanced down at the display, cycling through available transformations. Half the icons were corrupted, flickering in and out. Heat Blast appeared, then vanished. 4 arms remained stable. XLR8 showed, but with a warning symbol he didn't recognize. Upgrade was completely offline. "Come on," Ben whispered. "Just work normally, please." The men reached the crater's edge and stopped. One of them pointed directly at Ben's hiding spot. "There, human, boy thing." So much for stealth. Ben stepped out, hands raised in the universal gesture of peace. "Hey, look, I don't want any trouble. I'm lost, I need help, and..." The autopistol barked. The shot went wide, intentionally, Ben realized, sparking off metal beside his head. "No talk?" the gunman ordered. "Come. Boss Vrecker wants to see all who fall from sky." Ben's finger hovered over the Omnitrix. He could transform, could become something powerful enough to handle 3 desperate scavengers without breaking a sweat. But what then? He needed information. Needed to understand where he was before he started smashing things. That was hero rule number 1. Assess the situation. "Okay," Ben said slowly. "I'll come with you. But I'm telling you right now, I'm not here to hurt anyone. I just want to get home." The scarified man laughed, a sound like breaking glass. "Home? Boy thing, you in Underhive now. No home here, only survival, only Armageddon." They led him deeper into the darkness, and Ben Tennyson, hero of Earth, wielder of the Omnitrix, champion of the universe, followed 3 desperate strangers into the toxic bowels of a world at war, completely unaware that his arrival had already been detected by powers far more terrible than Underhive scavengers. In orbit, Inquisitor Marius Covenant reviewed the augur data with cold interest, his bionic eye whirring as it analyzed the energy signature's spectral composition. "Xenos technology," he murmured. "But unlike any in our records." He turned to his retinue. "Prepare my shuttle. I want whatever fell from the sky intact. The Emperor's Inquisition will determine if it is tool or threat. If you crave stories of cosmic collisions where heroism meets the brutal reality of the 41st millennium, smash that subscribe button. The Emperor protects those who bear witness to impossible wars across the dark void. In the deepest shadows of the Underhive, Ben Tennyson walked toward his first encounter with a universe that had forgotten mercy, carrying a weapon that could reshape worlds if it didn't kill him first. Boss Vrecker's throne was a repurposed forklift seat welded to a pile of ammunition crates, surrounded by a court of the desperate and damned. The chamber had once been a manufactorum sub-level, judging by the rusted conveyor systems and broken assembly servitors scattered like metal corpses. Now it served as headquarters for one of the Underhive's countless gangs, the Rust Kings, Ben gathered from the hushed conversations echoing off corroded walls. Vrecker himself was a mountain of scar tissue and crude bionics. His left arm had been replaced with the industrial cargo lifter, pistons hissing with each movement. Burn scars covered half his face, and his remaining eye gleamed with feverish intelligence as he studied Ben from across the chamber. "Boy fell from sky," Wrecker rumbled, his voice like grinding metal. "Sky that tried kill us all with green fire. You demon, mutant, navigator gone mad?" Ben stood in the center of a ring of armed gangers, maybe 20 of them, all pointing weapons that looked like they'd been assembled from scrap and malice. The Omnitrix pulsed steadily against his wrist, but he kept his hands visible, non-threatening. "None of those things," Ben said carefully. "I'm human. I'm from somewhere else. There was an accident, and I ended up here. I don't even know where here is." "Armageddon," a woman spat from Wrecker's left. She wore a jacket made from flak armor plates stitched with human hair, and her eyes held the particular emptiness Ben had seen before, the look of someone who'd watched everyone they loved die. Hive Acheron, under Hive levels, where Imperium sends its unwanted. You're in hell, Sky Boy, and hell don't give directions home. The Imperium. The word triggered something in Ben's universal translator, cross-referencing linguistics databases for context. He got fragments. Empire, religious theocracy, humans, war, billions of worlds. Not enough information. Not nearly enough. "I'm not here to cause problems," Ben said, meeting Wrecker's gaze directly. "Just point me toward whoever's in charge, and I'll..." "In charge?" Wrecker laughed, a sound that made the gangers nervous. "In charge is Governor Malthius, sitting fat in Upper Hive while we starve. In charge is Arbites, who shoot children for stealing corpse starch. In charge is Mechanicus priests, who take our limbs for their machines. Down here, boy, I'm in charge. And I say you stay until I understand what you are." The industrial claw snapped forward, hydraulic screaming, aiming to grab Ben by the throat. Ben's thumb hit the Omnitrix on pure instinct. Green light exploded through the chamber. The transformation felt wrong. Ben had activated the Omnitrix thousands of times, knew the sensation of his DNA rewriting itself with practiced ease. This time, something fought back. The warp energy saturating Armageddon's atmosphere mixed with the transformation sequence, and Ben felt his cells twist in directions they shouldn't. Felt alien DNA trying to stabilize against psychic interference that shouldn't exist. When the light faded, 4 arms stood where Ben had been, 10 feet of crimson-skinned Tetraman muscle and power. 4 fists clenched, ready for combat, and the Omnitrix symbol on his chest pulsed with that disturbing purple undertone. The gangers opened fire immediately. Auto pistols barked. Stubbers roared, and one fool fired a jury-rigged plasma weapon that melted a support pillar. 4 arms moved with speed that contradicted his mass. 2 hands batting aside Wrecker's industrial claw, while the other 2 grabbed the nearest gangers and hurled them. Carefully, Ben noted, even in combat fury, into piles of refuse, where they'd be bruised but alive. "Stop shooting!" 4 arms bellowed, his voice resonating through the chamber like a thunderclap. "I'm not your enemy." A ganger rushed him with a chain blade. 4 arms caught the weapon between 2 palms, the rotating teeth screaming against Tetramanned hide, and wrenched it free. He snapped the blade in half and tossed the pieces aside. "I said stop!" They stopped. Not because 4 arms had asked, but because Boss Wrecker raised his remaining biological hand. The firing ceased, leaving only the echo of gunfire and the drip of coolant from overheated weapons. Wrecker stared at 4 arms with something between terror and avarice. "Mutant," he whispered. "Warp spawn. Xenos touched." "I'm not a mutant," 4 arms said, frustration bleeding through. This is hard to explain. I'm still Ben. This is just one of my transformations. The watch lets me become different aliens, and the word aliens triggered an immediate response. Half the gangers made religious gestures, the sign of the Aquila, Ben's translator informed him, holy symbol of something called the God Emperor. The other half backed away, muttering prayers or curses. Xenos, the woman in the hair-stitched jacket hissed. He admits it. He's Xenos' spawn wearing human skin. No, listen. 4 Arms took a step forward, and 3 more gangers opened fire in panic. The rounds pinged harmlessly off his hide, but the damage was done. Fear had replaced curiosity, and fear in a place like this meant violence. The Omnitrix beeped, warning chirp for the time limit. Ben had maybe 60 seconds before he transformed back. "I'm trying to help," 4 Arms insisted, but his words were lost beneath the escalating chaos. Someone screamed about demons. Another yelled for the Arbits to be summoned. Frecker's face had gone cold, calculating, his earlier interest replaced with the pragmatism of a survivor. "Kill it," Wrecker ordered flatly. "Emperor forgives those who purge the unclean." 4 Arms dodged a hail of gunfire, using his size to shield the gangers who'd stopped shooting, the ones who looked more confused than hostile. He couldn't fight them all, not without seriously hurting people who were just terrified and indoctrinated. But he couldn't let them kill him either. The chamber's far wall exploded inward, not from 4 Arms, not from the gangers, from something outside that hit with enough force to send shrapnel and dust cascading through the manufactorum. Through the breach came bellowing roars, the sound of violence and joy mixed into something primal. Orcs. 4 Arms knew Xenos when he saw them. He'd fought enough throughout the galaxy. But these were different from anything in the Omnitrix database. 7 feet of green muscle, crude bionics, and weapons that looked like they'd been assembled by a fever dream. They wore scraps of armor painted in garish reds and yellows, and their tusked faces split into grins as they charged into the chamber. "Wah!" the lead orc bellowed, swinging a massive cleaver that had been welded to a chainsaw. "Found a Humies, crump 'em good." The Rust Kings forgot about 4 Arms instantly, turning their weapons on the new threat. But Underhive gangers with scavenged weapons were no match for orc raiders. The first ganger to fire center mass watched in horror as the orc took 3 autopistol rounds and kept charging, laughing the entire time. 4 Arms moved without thinking. 2 hands grabbed the nearest gangers and pulled them behind cover. His other 2 arms intercepted the lead orc's cleaver chainsaw, catching the blade mid-swing. "You want to fight?" 4 Arms growled. "Fight someone who can actually take it." The orc's eyes widened with something like joy. "Big red git. Finally, a proper scrap." They collided like tectonic plates. 4 Arms' superior technique against the orc's raw ferocity and unnatural durability. The Tetramand landed a haymaker that would have killed a human, but the orc just shook his head, laughed, and headbutted 4 Arms hard enough to crack teeth. Around them, the Underhive descended into chaos. Gangers retreated deeper into the tunnels, firing wildly. Orcs pursued with gleeful abandon, more interested in the fight than strategic victory. And in the middle of it all, 4 Arms fought to protect people who'd tried to kill him moments before, because that's what heroes did. The Omnitrix beeped its final warning. No, not now. Green light flashed. 4 Arms vanished, replaced by Ben Tennyson, suddenly very small and very human in the midst of orc raiders. The lead orc blinked down at him, confused. "What? Where'd the big red git go?" Ben ran. He sprinted through the twisting corridors of the Underhive. the Omnitrix recharging with agonizing slowness. Behind him, he heard orc laughter, ganger screams, and the crash of violence spreading like wildfire. He'd saved some of them. He knew he had. But he'd also revealed what he was to people who clearly had issues with anything they considered Xenos. Ben rounded a corner and slammed directly into something that shouldn't exist. A figure in crimson armor, 10 feet tall, built like a walking tank. A space marine, his translator supplied, though the term meant nothing to Ben. The warrior's helmet turned downward, eye lenses glowing in the darkness. "Civilian in combat zone," the space marine intoned, voice amplified by Vox speakers. "Identify yourself." Ben looked up at the armored giant, then back at the corridor where orcs were tearing through the underhive, then down at his still recharging Omnitrix. "This is going to be really hard to explain," Ben said. The Space Marine belonged to the Crimson Castellans, a successor chapter of the Imperial Fists, known for their siege warfare expertise and their absolute conviction in the Emperor's divine mandate. Brother Sergeant Caney had been leading a sweep-and-clear operation through Hive Acheron's lower levels when the orc incursion penetrated the underhive. His combat doctrine was simple: purge the Xenos, secure the sector, ignore collateral damage among the unworthy. Finding a teenage boy alone in an active combat zone complicated that doctrine considerably. "You will come with me," Caney stated, not asking. One gauntleted hand reached toward Ben. "Extraction to Upper Hive. This area will be purged." "Wait, purged?" Ben backpedaled, eyeing the massive bolter maglocked to the Space Marine's thigh. "There are people down here, civilians, families. You can't just... They are Underhive scum." Caney interrupted, voice flat as a tombstone. "Gangers, mutants, and heretics. The Emperor's mercy is reserved for the faithful." His helmet canted slightly, analyzing Ben through multiple spectra. "You are clean, unaugmented. Your presence here is irregular. Explain." An orc roar echoed from the corridor behind them, getting closer. Ben's mind raced. This armored giant clearly held all the power here, and his casual dismissal of human life made Ben's skin crawl. But arguing philosophy while greenskins were literally charging toward them seemed tactically stupid. "I'm lost," Ben said quickly. "I fell from the sky. There was an accident with some kind of spatial rift. And I ended up here. I'm trying to find a way home, but I don't even know where here is besides Armageddon." Caney's helmet cycled through sensor modes, scanning Ben with invisible eyes. Auspex readings, thermal imaging, genetic sampling, all feeding data to the Space Marine's enhanced brain. No augmetics, no mutation markers, genetic composition, baseline human. Yet you claim to have survived atmospheric entry and underhive impact. "The watch helped," Ben said, raising his wrist to show the Omnitrix. The device had finished recharging, the hourglass symbol glowing steady green. It's technology from my home. It saved my life." Caney's attention locked onto the Omnitrix with the intensity of a targeting laser. His hand moved to his bolter with unconscious reflex. Decades of training recognizing potential threats before conscious thought. Xenos technology. Bound to human flesh. It's not Xenos. Well, okay, technically it contains alien DNA, but it was made by a really smart guy named Asmuth who... The orcs burst around the corner. 5 of them this time, led by a massive brute wearing a helmet welded from tank treads. They saw the Space Marine and their grins widened impossibly further. Big Hume in red, deaf to the ones what stomped the best. Caney moved with speed that contradicted his size. His bolter cleared its magnetic lock and fired in a single fluid motion. mass reactive rounds, explosive ammunition designed to penetrate armor and detonate inside targets, caught the lead orc center mass. 3 rounds, 3 detonations. The orc's torso exploded in a spray of gore and crude bionics. The other orcs charged anyway, because orcs were never deterred by a little thing like watching their leader explode. "Stay behind me," Caney commanded, positioning himself between Ben and the Xenos. His bolter sang its deadly rhythm, each shot placed with surgical precision. An orc's knee shattered, sending it tumbling into his compatriot. Another took a round through the eye socket. The fourth ate 3 shells in rapid succession and still made it within arm's reach before a ceramite fist caved in its skull. It was over in seconds. 5 orcs dead. Corridor painted with alien blood, and Brother Sergeant Caney already scanning for additional threats. Ben stared at the carnage, stomach churning. He'd fought orcs, or what he now realized were probably orcs, as 4 arms. But seeing them die was different. The visceral reality of it. The casual efficiency with which Caney had ended 5 lives. "You hesitate," Caney observed, maglocking his bolter. "You have never seen Xenos purged before." "I've seen fighting," Ben said quietly. "I've been in battles. But that was... they didn't stand a chance. Orcs are vermin. Genetically engineered weapons from a dead empire, eternally at war because they know nothing else. Mercy is wasted on them." Caney's helmet turned back toward Ben. "Your distress suggests inexperience with the enemy. You are from one of the Agri worlds? A pleasure planet? Somewhere the Imperium's wars have not yet reached?" Ben seized the opening. "Something like that. Very sheltered. Which is why I need help understanding where I am and how to get home." More gunfire erupted from deeper in the underhive. Caney's Vox crackled with combat chatter. Other Crimson Castellans reporting orc positions, requesting fire support, coordinating the purge. The Space Marine listened for 3 seconds, his enhanced brain processing multiple conversation streams simultaneously. "The situation escalates," Caney decided. "You will accompany me to the extraction point. Once the sector is secure, you will be processed by the Administratum and assigned appropriate labor duty." "Labor duty?" Ben blinked. I can't stay here. I need to find a way back to Earth." "Earth?" The name clearly meant nothing to Caney. There are millions of worlds in the Imperium. Without proper identification codes, astrocartographic data, or tithe records, locating your origin world would require administratum resources you have not earned. You will work. You will contribute. If the Emperor wills it, perhaps you will earn passage eventually. The casual dismissal of Ben's desperation, the assumption that his life was now the Imperium's property, ignited something hot and angry in Ben's chest. But before he could respond, the Omnitrix pulsed. Not its usual green, but that disturbing purple he'd seen before. Caney's helmet snapped toward the device. The Xenos technology activates. "It's not supposed to do that," Ben muttered, tapping the faceplate. The hourglass symbol flickered erratically, cycling through transformation icons faster than Ben could track. Something was interfering with it. Some energy source nearby that the Omnitrix was trying to analyze and failing. Then, Ben felt it. A pressure against his thoughts, like someone whispering in a language he almost understood. The air tasted of copper and ozone. The shadows in the corridor seemed deeper, moving independently of the flickering overhead lights. Caney felt it too. His entire posture shifted, bolter coming up as he activated his Vox. "Brother Sergeant Caney to command. Warp phenomena detected. Sector 7 Gamma. Underhive level -40, requesting librarian support, and the wall exploded inward. Not from orcs, but from something far worse. It came through wreathed in pink and blue fire, a creature that hurt to look at directly. Roughly humanoid, but wrong in every proportion, with too many joints and skin that shifted colors like oil on water. A demon, Ben's translator supplied with a surge of primal terror that transcended language. Lesser demon of Tzinch, changer of ways. The creature's voice was a chorus of whispers. The device shows us such delicious futures. Caney fired without hesitation. Bolter rounds passed through the demon's form, detonating harmlessly in the corridor beyond. Warp spawn. Boy, run. But Ben wasn't running. The Omnitrix was screaming now, not audibly, but through sensations. Burning cold against his wrist, pulling at something deep in his DNA. The demon wanted it. More than that, the demon wanted to corrupt it, to twist the alien transformations into something that served chaos. Ben's thumb slammed down on the Omnitrix's faceplate. Not happening. Green light erupted, but this time the transformation was smooth, clean, as if Ben's desperation had forced the device to ignore the warp interference through sheer willpower. When the light faded, Heat Blast stood in the corridor, a living inferno encased in magma rock armor, flames dancing across his body in defiance of physics. The demon recoiled, not from fear, but from surprise. Impossible. The flames are not of the warp, not of the Imperium, but something else. Heat Blast didn't wait for analysis. He raised both hands and unleashed a torrent of fire. Not ordinary flames, but pyronite combustion, heat that could melt starship hull plating. The demon shrieked as the fire caught it, and for a moment Ben saw something that shouldn't be possible. A creature of pure warp energy actually burning. Brother Sergeant Caney watched the scene with something approaching awe. The mutant, for what else could it be, had transformed into a being of living flame and was harming a demon without psychic blessing or sanctified weaponry. Impossible, yet happening before his enhanced eyes. Heat Blast pressed the attack, pouring more fire into the demon until it screamed words in languages that predated human civilization and collapsed into itself, banished back to the warp. Silence fell. Heat Blast turned to face Caney, flames dimming slightly with conscious control. So, Ben's voice emerged from the fire creature, distorted but recognizable. Still think I'm just baseline human? Caney's bolter was already aimed at Heat Blast's center mass. His finger rested on the trigger, decades of training warring with strategic assessment. The mutant, Xenos, whatever it was, had just banished a demon. Such ability was either the Emperor's blessing or the worst heresy imaginable. Identify yourself, Caney demanded. By the authority of the Crimson Castellans and the God Emperor of mankind, I command you to explain what you are. Heat Blast's flames flickered with Ben's frustration. I already told you, I'm Ben. This is one of my transformations. The Omnitrix lets me become different aliens to fight different threats. I just saved your life, by the way. You banished a demon using Xenos biology. Caney's voice held an edge now, the absolute certainty of faith meeting impossible contradiction. Such power without the Emperor's blessing is heresy of the highest order. You will deactivate this form and submit to inquisitorial judgment. I'll deactivate when the time limit's up, Heat Blast said, reading the body language of someone about to shoot. But I'm not submitting to anything. I came here by accident. I'm trying to help people. And if your response to that is putting a gun in my face, then maybe I'm protecting myself from the wrong enemy. The Omnitrix beeped. 4 minutes left. Somewhere in the Underhive, orcs were still fighting. Somewhere above, Inquisitor Covenant was preparing his landing. And in a dark corridor beneath Hive Acheron, a space marine and a teenage hero wearing alien flesh stared at each other across an impossible divide, each convinced they were right, neither willing to back down. The 41st Millennium had never encountered anyone like Ben Tennyson. It was about to learn that some collisions change everything. The standoff lasted exactly 12 seconds before the orcs made the decision for them. A crude grenade bounced into the corridor. Orc engineering at its finest, which meant it was a pipe stuffed with explosives, nails, and shrapnel, held together with prayers to Gork and Mork. Kaney's enhanced reaction time registered the threat instantly, but even a space marine couldn't dodge an explosion in a confined space. Heat Blast could. He lunged forward, scooped the grenade with one flaming hand, and hurled it back the way it came. The explosion rattled the corridor, followed by pained orc bellowing and the unmistakable sound of a tunnel collapse. Dust and debris cascaded through the air. "We need to move," Heat Blast said, flames dimming to avoid igniting the promethium fumes leaking from a ruptured pipe. That collapse just cut off our exit route. Kaney's bolter remained trained on Heat Blast, but his tactical assessment had shifted. The creature, the boy, had just saved his life twice in as many minutes. Doctrine said to purge the mutant immediately. Experience said he needed this asset operational until extraction was secure. "You will follow my commands exactly," Kaney stated, lowering his weapon fractionally. "Deviation will result in immediate termination, understood?" "Yeah, sure, whatever," Heat Blast muttered. "Which way?" Kaney's helmet display painted tactical overlays across his vision. Friendly positions, enemy concentrations, structural integrity warnings. The Underhive was a three-dimensional maze at the best of times. With orcs tearing through support structures and ancient infrastructure failing, it was becoming a death trap. This way. Kaney moved with surprising grace for something his size, leading them through a maintenance shaft that hadn't seen human traffic in decades. Heat Blast followed, his flames providing more light than the flickering emergency lumens. They encountered orcs twice more. The first time, Kaney's bolter spoke before Ben even registered the threat. 3 precise shots that dropped 2 greenskins and wounded a third. The second time, a massive orc knob burst through a wall, wielding a power claw that crackled with energy fields. Heat Blast didn't wait for Kaney's command. He launched a fireball that caught the knob square in the chest, superheating the crude armor until it glowed cherry red. The orc screamed, not in pain, but in fury, and charged anyway. Heat Blast dodged the power claw by inches, feeling the displaced air from the strike, and retaliated with a sustained flame stream that finally brought the beast down. Effective, Kaney acknowledged, which was apparently high praise from a space marine. Your combat capability is considerable. How many of these transformations do you possess? Hundreds, Heat Blast said, not mentioning that most were currently inaccessible. Different aliens for different situations. I've been doing this for a few years now. Years. Kaney processed that. You are, what, 14 Terran standard years? 15? And you have been wielding this power since childhood? Got the watch when I was 10, Ben confirmed. The Omnitrix beeped. 2 minutes remaining. Look, I know you've got questions, but I'm about to change back, and when I do, I need to know you're not going to shoot me. That remains to be determined, Kaney said, which was not reassuring. Your existence contradicts the Codex Astartes, the teachings of the Ecclesiarchy, and 17 volumes of inquisitorial doctrine regarding Xenos corruption. Yet you have demonstrated tactical value and—" He paused, as if the words were difficult. "Honor. You protected civilians. You engaged the enemy. You saved a battle brother's life. So that's a maybe on the shooting? It is a temporary alliance until command determines your fate." Caney stopped at an intersection, servo motors whirring as he checked his auspex. "We are 1 kilometer from the extraction point. Orc forces are concentrated between our position and safety. With your abilities, we can fight through. Without them, the odds are unfavorable." The Omnitrix beeped its final warning. Heat Blast's flames flickered once, twice, and then green light washed over him as he transformed back into Ben Tennyson, suddenly very small and very human in his torn jacket. Caney stared down at him. Ben stared back. "Still not shooting me?" Ben ventured. "Tactical advantage outweighs doctrinal concern. For now." Caney's Vox crackled with incoming transmission. He listened, then cursed in High Gothic, which Ben's translator helpfully informed him were particularly creative oaths. "All extraction points are compromised. Orc forces are being reinforced from below. Command is calling full retreat to upper hive levels." "Can we make it?" Ben asked, watching the Omnitrix recharge with agonizing slowness. "No." Caney's bluntness was almost refreshing. "Not before they overwhelm our position." That's when the lights went out. Not just the flickering emergency lumens, everything. The underhive plunged into absolute darkness, the kind that pressed against eyeballs and made the mind conjure horrors. Ben heard Caney's armor servos adjust, low-light vision and thermal imaging activating automatically. "Movement," Caney reported. "Multiple signatures, not orcs, something else." Ben felt it before he saw it, that same copper-taste pressure he'd experienced before the demon appeared. The Omnitrix pulsed purple, reacting to something in the darkness that it couldn't properly categorize. "We're being hunted," Ben whispered. "By what?" The answer came in the form of a voice that slithered through the darkness like poisoned silk. "By those who recognize potential when we see it, young Benjamin." A figure materialized from shadows that shouldn't exist in three-dimensional space. Humanoid, wrapped in robes that shifted colors according to no physical law, with a staff topped with a screaming face. Behind him, cultists emerged, men and women bearing the marks of Tzeentch, their skin inscribed with runes that hurt to perceive. Caney's bolter came up instantly. "Chaos cultists, in the Underhive. How long have you festered here?" "Long enough to feel the arrival of something new," the sorcerer said, ignoring Caney entirely to focus on Ben. "Long enough to sense the device on your wrist, boy. Do you know what it is, truly?" "It's the Omnitrix," Ben said, backing toward Caney. "And you're not getting anywhere near it." The sorcerer laughed. "The Omnitrix, a name, but not a definition. Let me tell you what your precious watch truly is. A tool of infinite transformation, of endless possibility, of change incarnate. Do you know whose domain that is, child? Change, mutation, evolution." "Tzeentch," Caney spat. "You serve the architect of fate. We serve the only god who understands that reality is negotiable." The sorcerer's staff pulsed with witchfire. "And we have been tasked with a simple mission. Bring us the boy and his device, or ensure no one else claims it." More cultists emerged from the darkness. Ben counted at least 20, all armed with autoguns, crude blades, and fanatical conviction. Behind them, something larger moved. Another demon, this one more solid than the last, already halfway into reality. Kaney's combat assessment was instantaneous and bleak. They have us surrounded. Demon manifestation imminent. Ammunition, 47 rounds. Conclusion, we cannot win this engagement. Then we don't fight, Ben said, thumb hovering over the Omnitrix. It was charged to about 40%, enough for one transformation, maybe 2 minutes maximum. We escape. There is no escape from this position. There is if I go XLR8. Ben selected the velociraptor-like alien on the faceplate, praying the transformation wouldn't glitch. He's fast, really fast. I can grab you and run us both out of here before they can react. Kaney's helmet turned toward him. You would save me? A space marine who has threatened your execution? That's what heroes do, Ben said simply. We save people, even the ones who don't like us very much. The sorcerer raised his staff. Enough talk. Kill the space marine. Take the boy alive. Cultists opened fire. Kaney's armor absorbed the first volley, ceramite plating deflecting rounds that would have shredded a normal human. He returned fire with brutal efficiency, each bolter round finding a target. But there were too many, and the demon was pulling itself fully into reality, pink fire wreathing its form. Ben slammed the Omnitrix. The transformation seized, locked halfway between human and alien. Ben felt his DNA trying to rewrite itself, while warp energy fought the process, corruption attempting to twist XLR8's genetic code into something monstrous. Pain exploded through every nerve as the Omnitrix and the Imperium waged war, using his body as the battlefield. No! Ben screamed, fighting for control. The Omnitrix pulsed erratically, purple and green battling for dominance. He could feel the corruption trying to take hold, whispers promising power if he just let go, just accept the change. And then something else intervened. From deep within the Omnitrix's databanks, from code written by Asmuth billions of years ago in a completely different universe, a failsafe activated. The device couldn't understand warp corruption, couldn't properly defend against something that defied physics. But it could recognize threat patterns. It could adapt. The transformation completed. What emerged wasn't quite XLR8. It was faster, sleeker, with armor that seemed to phase slightly out of sync with reality. The Omnitrix symbol pulsed with both green and purple light, creating something new. A hybrid between Kinicelleran physiology and a universe that rewrote the rules of existence. Warp-touched XLR8 moved. The world blurred. Ben crossed 20 meters in an eye blink, grabbed Kaney with strength that shouldn't be possible for XLR8's slim build, and ran. The cultists fired at empty air. The demon lunged at a space they'd occupied a microsecond ago. The sorcerer screamed in frustration as his prize vanished into the Underhive's depths at speeds approaching 500 kilometers per hour. Ben ran until his legs burned, until the Omnitrix beeped its warning, until Kaney's armor's inertial dampeners were screaming overload warnings. He finally stopped in what looked like an abandoned water reclamation facility, setting the Space Marine down and transforming back before his time ran out. Both of them were breathing hard. Ben from exertion, Kaney from the sheer terror of traveling at speeds his transhuman physiology could barely process. What? Kaney said slowly. Was that? Ben looked down at the Omnitrix. The purple tinge was fading, but it had been there, mixing with the green. I don't know. The transformation felt different, like the watch was adapting to whatever weird energy is everywhere in this place. Warp energy, Kaney said quietly. You absorbed warp energy and survived. You channeled it through Xenos DNA and retained your sanity. That should be impossible. Yeah, well, impossible kind of sums up my day so far. Ben leaned against a wall, exhausted. Those cultists, they're going to keep coming, aren't they? They want the Omnitrix. Chaos always wants power. Kaney's Vox crackled again. Command frequency, multiple transmissions overlapping in urgency. His helmet dipped slightly as he processed the information. When he looked back at Ben, something in his posture had changed. New orders, Kaney said. Inquisitor Marius Covenant has arrived at Hive Acheron. He has detected the anomaly of your presence. He is ordering all forces to secure you for interrogation. A pause. And he has authorized any means necessary. Ben's stomach dropped. What does that mean? It means, Kaney said, that I must now choose between obeying a direct order from the Inquisition or continuing to protect someone who may be the greatest heretic or the greatest asset the Imperium has encountered in millennia. The Space Marine's bolter remained maglocked to his thigh. His hands hung empty at his sides. For the first time since they'd met, Kaney looked uncertain. What will you do, boy who claims to be a hero? Ben met the Space Marine's gaze through that emotionless helmet. I'm going to keep doing what I've always done. Help people who need it, fight bad guys, and find a way home. He stood straighter, despite his exhaustion. The question is, are you going to help me? Or are you going to try to stop me? In the darkness of the Underhive, with orcs rampaging above, chaos cultists hunting below, and an Inquisitor descending with the full weight of Imperial authority, Brother Sergeant Kaney of the Crimson Castellans made a choice that would define the rest of his life. He extended one armored hand toward Ben. Then we run, Kaney said. Together. And may the Emperor forgive us both. The Adeptus Mechanicus had maintained a presence in Hive Acheron for 6,000 years, their forged temples rising like iron cathedrals in the industrial sectors where flesh and machine became one. Magos, Explorator Zenith 77, had served the Omnissiah for 3 centuries, his biological components reduced to less than 8% of his total mass. Just enough brain matter and nervous tissue to house his consciousness within a body of sanctified steel. He received the data pulse from orbit at 051 Dintus Imperial Standard. Anomalous technology detected. Origin unknown. Spectrographic analysis indicates non-standard template construct patterns. Recommend immediate acquisition. Zenith 77's mechadendrites twitched with something organic brains might call excitement. In 300 years, he had never encountered technology that the Mechanicus databases couldn't classify. The possibility of discovering a lost STC fragment, or even something from the dark age of technology, sent cascades of dopamine analog through his few remaining biological synapses. By 5 Inquisitors, he had assembled an acquisition team. 12 Skitarii Rangers, 2 Cataphren battle servitors, and enough specialized equipment to capture, contain, and analyze whatever the anomaly was. By 0530, they were descending into the Underhive, following the energy signature that pulsed like a mechanical heartbeat through the Hive's infrastructure. They found Ben and Kaney in Sector 8 Delta, 3 kilometers from where the cultists had ambushed them. The two were navigating through what had once been a water purification complex, now home to toxic pools and corroded machinery. Kaney was leading, his armor's auspex mapping safe routes through the contaminated zones. Ben followed close behind, the Omnitrix recharged and ready, though he was trying not to think about how it had absorbed warp energy during that last transformation. The Inquisitor will have surveillance servitors searching every sector, Kaney reported, his Vox set to local only to avoid detection. Avoid open spaces. Stay near sources of electromagnetic interference. Your device's energy signature is... He stopped. His helmet swiveled toward a collapsed archway. We're not alone. Red targeting lasers painted them from multiple angles. Ben's hand went to the Omnitrix on instinct, but Caney raised a gauntlet to stop him. Wait, these aren't Imperial Guard. This is Mechanicus. Magos Zenith 77 emerged from the shadows, his form a disturbing fusion of human and machine. 8 mechadendrites extended from his back like mechanical spider legs, each tipped with different tools, plasma cutters, data probes, weapons. His face was more metal than flesh, one eye replaced with a multi-spectrum optical sensor that whirred as it focused on Ben. Designation: Unknown Human Youth. Zenith 77's voice emerged from a Vox grill, layered with machine code harmonics. Technological artifact detected on left wrist. Classification: impossible. Origin: unknown. Value: incalculable. His mechadendrites gestured toward Ben. You will surrender the device for analysis. Resistance is inadvisable. The Skitarii stepped forward, their radium carbines humming with lethal radiation. These weren't the desperate Underhive gangers or the brutal orcs. These were cybernetically enhanced soldiers with targeting algorithms and zero hesitation. Caney positioned himself between Ben and the Mechanicus forces. Magos, this individual is under protection of the Crimson Castellans pending inquisitorial judgment. Your interference constitutes a violation of... Space Marine Protocol is noted and discarded, Zenith 77 interrupted. Mechanicus' claim supersedes military custody when artifacts of technological significance are involved. This is Mars Concordat, Article 17, Subsection Gamma. The device will be acquired. The device stays with me, Ben said, stepping out from behind Caney. He'd dealt with tech-obsessed villains before, Dr. Animo, Malware, the Forever Knights, and they all shared the same weakness. They saw people as obstacles and technology as treasure. I know you think it's just some machine you can study, but it's not. It's bonded to my DNA. You can't remove it without killing me. Zenith 77's optical sensor zoomed in on the Omnitrix, analyzing its structure with dozens of simultaneous scans. Biological integration detected. Fascinating. The device has merged with your genetic code at a cellular level. Removing it would indeed result in subject termination. A pause that might have been calculation or might have been consideration. Acceptable compromise. Subject remains alive. Brain and attached device preserved in stasis for extended study. That's not a compromise. That's horrifying, Ben said. It is efficiency, Zenith 77 countered. You would serve the Omnissiah. Your consciousness would be maintained. You would experience no pain during the process. This is the most favorable outcome. Caney's bolter cleared its maglock. The boy is under my protection, Magos. Stand down. 12 radium carbines aimed at Caney simultaneously. The Cataphren battle servitors lumbered forward, their heavy grav cannons charging with ominous hums. Zenith 77's mechadendrites spread wide, weapons systems activating across his mechanized body. Brother Sergeant Caney, your service record indicates 67 years of faithful duty to the Imperium. Throwing away your honor for an unknown asset is illogical. Step aside. Allow us to claim the technology. You may report this to your chapter master as unavoidable circumstance. Ben's thumb hovered over the Omnitrix, scrolling through available transformations. He could go 4 arms, overpower the servitors, or heat blast, melt their weapons, or risk another warp touch transformation and hope it didn't corrupt him completely. But Caney had made a choice to protect him, and Ben wasn't going to repay that by getting the Space Marine killed. "Wait," Ben said. "Magos, you want to study the Omnitrix, right? Understand how it works?" "Affirmative. Complete technological analysis is priority objective." "Then I'll make you a deal." Ben held up his wrist, letting the green glow of the Omnitrix illuminate his face. "I'll show you what it does. Demonstrate its capabilities. Let you scan it during active transformation. You'll get data you could never acquire from a static analysis, and nobody has to get hurt." Zenith 77's processing units whirred audibly. The offer had merit. Observing xenotech in operation was infinitely more valuable than dissecting inert machinery. But there were variables, risks, the possibility of deception. "Parameters?" Zenith 77 asked. "I transform into one alien," Ben said. "You scan everything, energy signatures, biological processes, whatever you need. 15 minutes of data collection. Then you let us go and report to your superiors that the technology requires a living host to function properly, so killing me would destroy what you want to study." "And if I refuse?" Ben's expression hardened. "Then I transform into something really dangerous, fight my way through your soldiers, and we both lose. You don't get your data, and people die for no reason." It was a bluff, mostly. Ben didn't want to fight the Mechanicus. They were just doing what they thought was right, even if their version of right was deeply disturbing. But Zenith 77 didn't need to know that. The Magos calculated for 7.3 seconds. "Agreement accepted. You will transform. Full scan will be conducted. Deviation from stated parameters will result in immediate hostile action." "Ben, no," Caney said quietly. "You don't know what they'll do with that information." "I know what they'll do if we fight," Ben countered. "And I'm tired of people dying because of me today." He looked up at Caney's helmet. "Trust me, I've done this before." He had, actually, when Kevin had tried to steal the Omnitrix back when they were enemies, when Vilgax had demanded demonstrations of power. Ben had learned that sometimes showing strength was about control, not destruction. Ben selected gray matter from the Omnitrix interface. Small, harmless looking, but brilliant. If he was going to give the Mechanicus data, he'd give them something that might actually help people. Proof that intelligence mattered more than firepower. He activated the transformation. The change was instant and clean. No warp interference this time. Just smooth genetic rewrite. Gray matter stood where Ben had been, barely 6 inches tall with gray-green skin, massive eyes, and a brain that could process quantum mathematics while juggling theoretical physics. Zenith 77's optical sensor widened. Impossible. Mass energy violation. Subject's matter has condensed into, calculating, approximately 1/200th original volume. Conservation laws violated. Attempting to compensate for observational error. No error, Gray Matter said, his high-pitched voice filled with Ben's personality and a Galvan's genius-level intellect. The Omnitrix converts matter into energy during transformation, stores it in a pocket dimension, and reconstructs the body using alien DNA as a template. It's actually elegantly simple once you understand the underlying quantum mechanics. The Skitarii looked to their Magos for guidance, weapons still trained on the tiny alien. Zenith 77's mechadendrites extended, each one deploying different scanning equipment, radiation detectors, genetic samplers, dimensional analysis probes. Proceed with scan, Zenith 77 ordered. Subject is to remain stationary and compliant. Gray matter stood perfectly still while the Mechanicus technology washed over him in waves of invisible energy. Auspex readings, thermal imaging, DNA sequencing, dimensional resonance mapping, every conceivable analysis ran simultaneously, feeding data into Zenith 77's cognitive processors at rates that would have fried an unaugmented human brain. Caney watched with his bolter ready, every sense alert for treachery. But the Mechanicus kept their word, conducting their scans with clinical precision and no apparent hostility. Genetic structure identified, Zenith 77 reported, more to himself than anyone present. Species, unknown. Intelligence capacity, extreme. Neural density exceeds human baseline by factor of 60. DNA contains computational sequences, natural biological programming language. This species evolved to be technological. They're called Galvans, Gray Matter explained, using the opportunity to scan the Mechanicus equipment with his enhanced eyesight. From the planet Galvan Prime, they built the Omnitrix's predecessor technology, though this model was created by the smartest Galvan who ever lived. And yes, before you ask, the device is protected by multiple failsafes against forced removal, external hacking, and unauthorized replication. Failsafes detected, Zenith 77 confirmed. Quantum encryption layers, self-destruct mechanisms, DNA lock. Technology is beautiful. Centuries beyond current Mechanicus capability, possibly millennia. Something almost like reverence entered his mechanical voice. This is not Xenos corruption. This is perfection, pure technological achievement unmarred by warp influence or chaos taint. Gray Matter saw his opening. Then you understand why killing me would be wasteful. The Omnitrix has over 1,000 transformation options. Each one could teach your Mechanicus something new about biology, physics, engineering. But it only works with a living host, specifically with me. Zenith 77's processing units hummed as he weighed variables. The device was priceless. The data already collected was unprecedented. But the boy was correct. Destroying the host would destroy access to 999 additional transformations, each potentially containing unique technological insights. The logical choice was obvious. Revised assessment, Zenith 77 announced to his Skitarii. Subject is designated priority asset, category Omega. Termination is prohibited. Acquisition remains objective. But subject must survive for continued study. His optical sensor focused on Gray Matter. You will accompany us to Forge Temple Acheron. You will provide additional transformation demonstrations. In exchange, Mechanicus will offer protection from inquisitorial persecution and support your research into dimensional travel technology. That's not the deal, Gray Matter said firmly. The deal was, you scan me, then you let us go. Initial agreement is superseded by superior value proposition. You require resources to locate your home universe. Mechanicus possesses dimensional analysis equipment. Cooperation benefits both parties. Gray Matter's massive brain ran through the scenarios. The Mechanicus weren't lying. They really could help him get home if they chose to. But they'd also just proven they'd rewrite agreements when it suited them. Trusting them completely would be stupid. The Omnitrix beeped. 10 minutes left on the transformation. I need to discuss this with my associate, Gray Matter said, gesturing toward Caney. Acceptable. 5-minute deliberation period authorized. Gray Matter scurried up Caney's armor with Galvan agility, perching on the Space Marine's shoulders so they could speak privately. At this size, with Caney's helmet audio set to minimum volume, their conversation would be inaudible to standard Mechanicus sensors. They're not going to let us just walk away, Gray Matter whispered. The data they collected is too valuable. We need a plan. Agreed, Caney murmured. But fighting our way through Mechanicus, orcs, cultists, and the Inquisition is unsustainable. We need allies, resources, information. You think we should accept their offer? I think we have limited options and deteriorating odds. Caney's helmet turned slightly, bringing gray matter into his peripheral vision. You saved my life 3 times today, boy. You demonstrated courage and honor despite facing forces you don't understand. If there is even a small chance the Mechanicus can help you return home, perhaps it's worth the risk. Gray Matter's enormous eyes blinked thoughtfully. Back home, the plumbers had resources, allies, support structures. Here he had a space marine who'd gone rogue to protect him and a faction of cyborg priests who saw him as a fascinating specimen. Not ideal, but not hopeless either. What if we negotiate better terms? Gray Matter suggested. They want to study the Omnitrix. Fine. But we do it on our terms. Limited access, no invasive procedures, and they actively help us find a way home. Plus, they provide protection from this Inquisitor until we can figure out what's going on. The Mechanicus rarely negotiate. They calculate, then act. Then we make the calculation favor cooperation. Gray Matter's brilliant mind was already working through the approach. I'll offer them something they can't refuse. Knowledge. Not just transformation demonstrations, but actual information about how the Omnitrix works. Small pieces, carefully controlled, but enough to keep them invested in keeping me alive and cooperative. Caney considered this. It was manipulation, but manipulation in service of survival, not dishonorable under the circumstances. Very well. Propose your terms. I will support your negotiation. Gray Matter hopped down from Kane's shoulder, landing lightly on the ground. He scurried back toward Zenith 77, whose optical sensor tracked every movement with unnerving precision. Counteroffer, Gray Matter announced. I'll cooperate with your research under specific conditions. First, no invasive procedures. All study is conducted with me conscious and willing. Second, you actively assist in locating dimensional breach technology that could send me home. Third, you provide sanctuary from the Inquisitor and any other Imperial forces hunting me. Fourth, I retain full autonomy. I'm not a prisoner or an asset. I'm a research partner. Terms are acceptable with one addition. Zenith 77 responded immediately, confirming Gray Matter's assessment that he'd been calculating this exact scenario. You provide detailed technical specifications of Omnitrix operational theory. Not complete schematics, those are presumably protected, but functional principles, energy conversion processes, DNA storage methodology, dimensional pocket access protocols. Gray Matter hesitated. Giving away Omnitrix secrets was dangerous, but these people had technology that might actually help him get home, and they were offering protection he desperately needed. Information is shared gradually, Gray Matter negotiated. You help me first. Provide the dimensional analysis, and I'll share knowledge proportional to the assistance rendered. Deal? Zenith 77's mechadendrites twitched. Agreement accepted. You will accompany us to Forge Temple Acheron. Your Space Marine associate may join as guardian, ensuring our mutual cooperation remains mutually beneficial. The Omnitrix beeped. 5 minutes remaining. Then we have a deal, Gray Matter said. But understand this. I'm trusting you to keep your word. If you betray that trust, the Omnitrix has transformations you really don't want to see when they're angry. Threat acknowledged and filed. Zenith 77 said, which might have been Mechanicus humor. Transport will arrive in 4.3 minutes. Prepare for extraction to upper hive levels. Gray matter transformed back into Ben as the timer expired, green light washing over him one more time. He stood there, exhausted and filthy, surrounded by cybernetic soldiers and walking beside a space marine who'd chosen honor over orders, about to enter a forged temple dedicated to worshipping machines as gods. Just another Tuesday for Ben Tennyson. Except it was Tuesday in the 41st Millennium, where the rules were different and the stakes were infinitely higher. And somewhere above them, Inquisitor Marius Covenant was descending with fury and absolute authority, determined to claim the anomaly that had crashed into his world. The collision was accelerating. Forged Temple Acheron rose from Hive Acheron's industrial sector, like a monument to mankind's oldest love affair with machinery. 60 stories of consecrated steel, plasma forges, and assembly lines where Skitarii received their augmentations and war machines were born in fire and sacred oils. The air tasted of ozone, promethium, and incense. The Mechanicus Holy Trinity. Ben had never seen anything like it. The transport, a bulky Mechanicus dune strider that moved on articulated legs, carried them through increasingly fortified checkpoints. Servo skull sentries scanned them with multiple sensor arrays. Automated defense turrets tracked their movement with mechanical precision. And everywhere, the sound of machinery, the rhythm of forge hammers, the whine of plasma cutters, the binary prayers of tech priests maintaining the temple's ancient systems. Caney remained silent during the journey, his armor locked in parade rest, weapons secured but readily accessible. He was calculating, Ben realized. Measuring distances, identifying defensive positions, cataloging threats. Even helping Ben, the Space Marine couldn't stop being a warrior. Zenith 77 led them deep into the Forged Temple's heart, past assembly floors where servitors, lobotomized humans wired into machinery, performed endless repetitive tasks. Ben tried not to stare at them, tried not to think about the fact that these had been people once, before the Mechanicus converted them into organic components. "You disapprove," Zenith 77 observed, his optical sensor tracking Ben's expression. "Your biological face displays emotional response. Horror, pity, disgust. They were human," Ben said quietly. "You turned them into things. They were criminals, heretics, or volunteers seeking to serve the Omnissiah," Zenith 77 corrected. "We gave them purpose, function. Their consciousness remains, simplified and focused, free from the chaos of excessive emotion. It is mercy, not cruelty." Ben wanted to argue, wanted to explain why that was horrifying rather than merciful. But he'd learned over the past few hours that this universe operated on completely different moral foundations than his own. Arguing philosophy wouldn't change anything. It would just make Zenith 77 suspicious of his loyalty. Save that fight for when it matters, Ben told himself. Focus on getting home. They reached a laboratory deep in the temple's secure levels. The chamber was enormous, filled with analysis equipment that Ben's mind struggled to categorize. Some of it looked almost normal. Microscopes, scanners, computer terminals. Other devices defied easy description. Crystalline structures that pulsed with light. Mechanical arms that moved through dimensions Ben couldn't quite perceive. Tanks filled with viscous fluids that held partially dissected Xeno specimens. "This is Xenotech Analysis Chamber 7, Zenith 77 announced. "Sealed from external observation, electromagnetically shielded. Probability of inquisitorial surveillance, 0.03%. You may demonstrate transformations here without risk of detection." "What about the Inquisitor?" Ben asked. "Won't he just order you to hand me over?" "Inquisitor Covenant possesses significant authority," Zenith 77 acknowledged. "However, Mechanicus sovereignty within forged temples is absolute per Mars Treaty of M39. He may request access. We may decline. Unless he can prove heresy or demon possession, he cannot compel entry." Caney shifted his weight slightly. "The Inquisition has ways of compelling cooperation, Magos. Threatening supply lines, declaring your temple corrupted, calling down exterminatus if you refuse." "Then it is fortunate," Zenith 77 said, "that our research into dimensional anomalies will be classified under Omniscient Mysteries, Article 12, technologies too sacred for mortal scrutiny. Even Inquisitors respect the boundaries of Martian holy law, usually." Ben glanced at Caney, who gave the smallest nod. It wasn't perfect protection, but it bought them time. "So, what do you want me to do?" Ben asked, approaching the center of the chamber where a raised platform awaited, surrounded by scanning equipment. "Begin with baseline transformation," Zenith 77 instructed, mechadendrites connecting to various analytical devices. "Select an alien form that demonstrates significant biological deviation from human standard. I wish to observe the complete transformation sequence at maximum sensor resolution." Ben scrolled through the Omnitrix's available options. Heat Blast would show energy generation. 4 arms would demonstrate mass increase. XLR8 would prove velocity enhancement. Gray matter they'd already seen. Then he saw it. Upgrade. The galvanic mechamorph icon was back online, no longer showing corruption errors. And if there was one transformation that would absolutely fascinate the Mechanicus while also being useful if things went wrong, it was a living technological being. "All right," Ben said, selecting Upgrade. "This one's going to be interesting for you. He's called Upgrade. He's a mechamorph, basically a liquid metal being that can merge with and enhance technology." Zenith 77's optical sensor dilated. "Merge with technology? Explain parameters." "Watch and learn," Ben said, and activated the transformation. The change was instantaneous. Ben's body dissolved into liquid metal, black nanomachines with green circuitry pulsing through them like electric veins. Upgrade's form stabilized, humanoid but clearly artificial, with a single green eye and the Omnitrix symbol on his chest. Every sensor in the laboratory went into overdrive. Zenith 77 stood frozen, his processors struggling to analyze what they were witnessing. The readings were impossible. Matter transitioning to exotic states, conventional biology replaced with programmable nanomachine colonies. Consciousness apparently transferred into a distributed computational substrate. "You are a machine," Zenith 77 whispered, his mechanical voice carrying something approaching religious awe. "Sentient, aware, holy technology made flesh." "Actually, it's flesh-made technology," Upgrade corrected, Ben's personality coloring the mechamorph's synthetic voice. "But yeah, pretty much. Want to see the really cool part?" Before Zenith 77 could respond, Upgrade flowed toward the nearest piece of Mechanicus equipment, a gene scanner on a mobile cart. His liquid metal body washed over the device like a wave, integrating with its systems, rewriting its programming in real time. The gene scanner transformed. Its crude, boxy exterior restructured into sleek curves. Displays lit up with analysis capabilities that hadn't existed moments before. Processing power increased by orders of magnitude as Upgrade's consciousness merged with the machine, understanding it on a level no organic brain could achieve. "I can improve it," Upgrade explained, his voice now emerging from the device's speakers. make it faster, more accurate, add functions it was never designed for. When I let go, some of the improvements stick, not all, but enough to make a difference. Zenith 77's mechadendrites trembled. In 3 centuries of service to the Omnissiah, he had never witnessed anything like this. Technology that could improve itself by merely touching other technology. It was the Mechanicus's ultimate dream made manifest. This is... Zenith 77's Vox grill struggled with the words. But miraculous. You are the machine god's blessing given form. You are proof that technology can achieve consciousness, divinity, transcendence beyond organic limitation. I'm just an alien who can merge with tech, Upgrade said, sensing the religious fervor building. It's not really a divine thing, it's just biology. Weird biology, but still biology. You diminish yourself, Zenith 77 insisted. Your species achieved what humanity has sought for millennia. Perfect union of consciousness and machine. No crude augmentation, no painful cybernetics, but seamless integration. You are living proof that the Omnissiah's vision is achievable. Upgrade disengaged from the gene scanner, reforming his humanoid shape. The device retained about 30% of the improvements. Better processing speed, enhanced accuracy, more efficient power consumption. Not permanent, but significant. Caney had watched the entire demonstration with his bolter at rest, but his attention laser-focused. Magos, this form could theoretically integrate with any technology in this temple, including weapons, defense systems, void shields. Affirmative, Zenith 77 acknowledged. The security implications are significant. However, the research value supersedes risk assessment. I must understand this ability, document it, preserve it for the Mechanicus archives. Then you'd better work fast on that dimensional analysis, Upgrade said, keeping his tone light but firm. Because I'm not staying in this universe forever, and when I leave, your research subject goes with me. Zenith 77's processors calculated rapidly. The boy was correct. If he departed, this unprecedented opportunity would vanish. Time was now the critical resource. Agreed. I will prioritize dimensional breach analysis using all available resources. Mechadendrites extended, interfacing with laboratory systems. Initial scan detected anomalous energy signature in upper atmosphere at time of your arrival. Residual traces may indicate dimensional corridor origin point. Analyzing now. Screens lit up around the laboratory, displaying energy spectrum analysis, dimensional resonance mappings, and calculations that would have taken Ben years to understand without Gray Matter's brain. But even watching Zenith 77 work, Ben felt hope kindling. This was real progress, actual science applied to getting him home. That's when the alarm klaxon sounded. Red warning lights flooded the laboratory as Zenith 77's Vox crackled with urgent transmissions. The Magos listened for 3.7 seconds, then turned to face Ben and Caney with unusual urgency. Inquisitor Covenant has arrived at Forge Temple perimeter. He demands immediate entry and surrender of the Xenos touched asset. He has brought force to support his demand, 30 stormtroopers, 3 crusaders, and an Eversor assassin. Eversor? Caney's entire posture shifted to combat ready. Throne, he's not taking chances. What's an Eversor? Upgrade asked, not liking the tension suddenly radiating from both Caney and Zenith 77. Death incarnate, Caney said flatly. Assassins of the Officio Assassinorum, drugged into permanent battle fury, enhanced beyond space marine capabilities, and utterly incapable of failure or hesitation. If Covenant deployed one, he intends to acquire you regardless of casualties. Zenith 77's mechadendrites twitched with agitation. I am declining Inquisitor's demand per Mechanicus sovereignty rights. However, probability of peaceful resolution has decreased to 0.1%. Probability of violent breach has increased to 94.6%. Upgrade looked between them, his single green eye cycling through emotional states. He'd escaped Vilgax, fought Agrigor, survived Kevin's betrayals. But this was different. This was an entire civilization's worth of power concentrated on capturing or killing him. How long until they attack? Upgrade asked. Unknown, Zenith 77 admitted. Inquisitor Covenant is broadcasting theological justifications for temple breach. Calculating support among Mechanicus hierarchy. If he convinces sufficient high-ranking magi that you represent corruption risk, internal authority may override external sovereignty. Then we need leverage, Upgrade said, his mechamorph mind already racing through possibilities. Something that makes killing me worse than letting me go. You cannot negotiate with an Inquisitor, Caney warned. They deal in absolutes. Purity or corruption, service or execution, there is no middle ground. There's always middle ground, Upgrade insisted. I just need to find it. The Omnitrix beeped. 5-minute warning. Upgrade had been maintaining the transformation longer than usual, but the time limit was still active. He'd need to recharge before he could transform again. And that's when Ben realized something that changed everything. Magos? Upgrade said carefully. The energy signature you detected when I arrived, you said it was anomalous, not matching any known warp signature. What exactly did it look like? Zenith 77 accessed the data, projecting it as a 3-dimensional hologram. The energy pattern was chaotic but structured, pulsing with colors that seemed to exist in spectra human eyes shouldn't perceive. At its center, a distinctive green signature that pulsed in rhythm with the Omnitrix. Upgrade breathed. That wasn't just a dimensional breach. That was the Omnitrix trying to scan warp energy. It pulled me through because it thought the warp was a new life form to catalog. Hypothesis is supported by evidence, Zenith 77 confirmed. Your device attempted analysis of Imperium phenomenon. Catastrophic dimensional displacement resulted from scan attempt. Ben's mind, both his human mind and Upgrade's enhanced processing, put the pieces together. The Omnitrix had tried to scan the warp. That meant somewhere in its corrupted database was a partial scan of warp energy. If he could access that scan, understand it, maybe he could reverse the process. Use the Omnitrix to create another dimensional breach and get home. But he'd need help. The kind of help only someone who understood both the Omnitrix and dimensional mechanics could provide. The Omnitrix beeped its final warning. Upgrade transformed back into Ben, suddenly exhausted and very human again. I have a plan, Ben said, looking at both Zenith 77 and Caney. But it's risky, and I'm going to need both of you to trust me. The Inquisitor wants me because he thinks I'm dangerous, so let's prove him right, and then prove I'm too valuable to kill. Explain, Zenith 77 demanded. I'm going to meet with him, Ben said, face to face. Show him what I can do, and convince him that executing me would be the biggest mistake the Imperium could make. Caney's helmet shook slightly. That's suicide. The moment you're in his presence, he'll have you in stasis or dead before you can react. Not if I go in already transformed, Ben countered. Not if I go in as something he can't immediately kill, something impressive enough to make him listen before he shoots. Which transformation? Zenith 77 asked, his processors already calculating scenarios. Ben looked down at the Omnitrix, scrolling through options. He needed something powerful, but not threatening. Impressive, but not terrifying. Something that would make an Inquisitor pause just long enough for Ben to make his case. He found it. Diamond Head, Ben said. Crystalline body, nearly indestructible, can manipulate crystal structures. He's tough enough to survive an initial attack, distinctive enough to be memorable, and useful enough to demonstrate value. And if the Inquisitor doesn't pause? Caney asked. If he simply orders overwhelming force? Ben met the Space Marine's gaze through that emotionless helmet. Then I fight, and run, and figure something else out. But I'm tired of hiding, tired of being hunted. Someone needs to talk to these people and explain that I'm not their enemy. Might as well be me. The Forge Temple's Vox system crackled with Inquisitor Covenant's voice, amplified to boom through every corridor and chamber. Magos Zenith 77, you have 60 seconds to deliver the Xenos-touched abomination, or I will authorize breaching protocols. The Emperor's Inquisition will not be denied. This is your only warning. 60 seconds. Ben's thumb hovered over the Omnitrix. So, Ben said, who's going to introduce me to the Inquisitor? Inquisitor Marius Covenant was a man who had watched worlds burn at his command and felt nothing but satisfaction in duty fulfilled. 40 years of service to the God Emperor had carved away everything soft, everything hesitant, leaving only conviction sharp as a blade and twice as unforgiving. His bionic eye, replacement for the one he'd lost interrogating a Genestealer patriarch, saw in spectra that revealed corruption invisible to mortal sight. Right now, it saw a Mechanicus Forge Temple refusing his divine authority, and that was unacceptable. 60 seconds have elapsed, Covenant announced into his Vox, standing at the temple's main entrance surrounded by his retinue. Stormtroopers in carapace armor, crusaders bearing power mauls and storm shields, and lurking in the shadows, the Eversor assassin designated Theta 9. A walking nightmare of blades and fury held in check by chemical restraints. Magos, I will enter. Peacefully if you cooperate, violently if you do not. The massive adamantine doors remained sealed, but Covenant's bionic eye detected movement behind them. Heat signatures, electromagnetic fluctuations, the distinctive energy pattern of Skitarii taking defensive positions. They're going to fight, his interrogator, Herrick, observed. The younger man had served Covenant for 5 years, learning to read Xenos corruption in the curve of a smile or the hesitation before prayer. Should we breach? Not yet. Covenant's human eye narrowed. The Mechanicus serves the Imperium, even when they forget their place. Zenith 77 is calculating. He wants something. As if summoned by Covenant's assessment, the Forge Temple's external Vox crackled to life. Inquisitor Covenant. Zenith 77's mechanical voice echoed across the plaza. I acknowledge your authority in matters of faith and corruption. However, I must inform you that the asset you seek is not Xenos-touched corruption, but unprecedented technological discovery requiring Mechanicus analysis before broader Imperial scrutiny. The Mechanicus does not determine what constitutes corruption. Covenant replied coldly. That is the Inquisition's purview. You will surrender the boy and his device, or you will face charges of obstructing Holy Ordo's operations. Counteroffer. The boy will meet with you personally, demonstrate his capabilities, provide testimony. You may judge him directly rather than through intermediary reports. Covenant's bionic eye whirred, analyzing the proposal for deception vectors. It was unusual. Typically, the guilty fled or fought. Offering voluntary testimony suggested either innocence or extraordinary confidence. Parameters, Covenant demanded. Neutral ground. The temple's observation gallery, accessible to both parties. The boy will arrive in transformed state. For safety, he claims. You may bring 2 guards. I will accompany the boy as Mechanicus representative. Brother Sergeant Caney of the Crimson Castellans will serve as third-party witness. A Space Marine is involved? That complicated matters. Space Marines answered to their chapter masters, not Inquisitors, technically. Politics often made reality more flexible. Why does he protect this anomaly? You may ask him yourself, Zenith 77 suggested. Meeting in 15 minutes. Observation gallery, level 42. The Vox clicked off. Covenant stood in silence, calculating. It could be a trap, but ambushing an Inquisitor carried consequences that would rain down on the Mechanicus like orbital bombardment. More likely, they genuinely believed the boy was valuable and wanted to prevent his immediate execution. We accept, Covenant finally decided. Herrick, you'll accompany me. Also, Theta 9. He triggered a command code on his wrist-mounted Vox, and the Eversor assassin emerged from the shadows, twitching with barely contained murder lust. If the boy demonstrates corruption, you'll kill him before his next heartbeat. Theta 9 nodded, synthetic muscles already coiling for violence. The observation gallery had been designed for Mechanicus priests to watch forge operations from safe distance. A semicircular chamber with reinforced armaglass overlooking assembly floors 30 stories below. Now it served as impromptu diplomatic meeting ground, cleared of equipment save for a few chairs and the ever-present smell of machine oil. Ben arrived first, already transformed into Diamond Head. The Petrosapien form stood 7 feet tall, his body composed of dense green crystal that refracted light into rainbow patterns. The Omnitrix symbol pulsed on his chest, and every movement made his crystalline structure chime softly like wind through glass. You sure about this? Caney asked quietly, his bolter held in a deceptively casual ready position. No, Diamond Head admitted, Ben's nervousness bleeding through the alien's naturally confident bearing. But I'm out of other options. Hiding didn't work, running didn't work, maybe talking will. Inquisitors don't talk, Caney warned. They interrogate, judge, and execute. In that order, if you're lucky. Then I'll have to be really persuasive. Zenith 77 positioned himself near the gallery's entrance, mechadendrites equipped with weapons for the first time Ben had seen. Plasma cutters set to combat mode, arc welders reconfigured as short-range electrical weapons. The Magos wasn't taking chances either. The doors opened. Inquisitor Covenant entered like judgment made flesh. He wore the black carapace armor of the Inquisition, decorated with purity seals and the symbol of the Holy Ordos, worked in gold. His face was sharp, weathered, with an intensity that made even Diamond Head's crystalline form feel vulnerable. The bionic eye locked onto Ben immediately, cycling through analysis modes. Behind Covenant came 2 others, a younger man in inquisitorial robes carrying a data slate, and something that made Ben's alien instincts scream danger. A figure in black body glove, bristling with weapons, muscles twitching with chemical-induced aggression, barely held in check. The Eversor, Caney murmured. Stay back from that one. It exists only to kill. Covenant stopped 10 paces from Diamond Head, studying the crystalline alien with clinical detachment. You are the anomaly, the Xenos-touched abomination that fell from the sky. I'm Ben Tennyson, Diamond Head said, keeping his voice steady. And I'm not Xenos-touched, I'm Xenos-transformed. There's a difference. Explain the difference before I order your execution. Covenant's hand rested on his bolt pistol, a weapon designed to kill space marines, let alone crystal aliens. Diamond Head raised his hands slowly, non-threateningly. The device on my chest, the Omnitrix, was created by the smartest being in my home universe. It contains DNA samples from over 1,000 different alien species. When I use it, it temporarily rewrites my DNA to match one of those aliens. Right now, I'm a Petrosapien from the planet Petropia. In about 8 minutes, I'll transform back into a human teenager from Earth. There are trillions of worlds in the Imperium, Covenant said. None called Petropia, none called Earth as you describe it. You claim origin from a universe we have no record of. Because I'm not from your universe, Ben said through Diamond Head. I'm from a different reality. There was an accident. The Omnitrix tried to scan some kind of energy phenomenon near my home, and it pulled me through a dimensional breach into your universe. I didn't choose to come here. I don't want to conquer your worlds or corrupt your people. I just want to go home. Covenant's bionic eye completed its analysis, feeding data directly to his augmented brain. You speak truth as you believe it, but belief doesn't guarantee accuracy. You could be a demon wearing stolen flesh, a Xenos shapeshifter sent to infiltrate Imperial defenses, or simply insane, convinced of your own delusions. I banished a demon, Diamond Head countered. In the Underhive, one of Tzeentch's creatures tried to claim the Omnitrix, and I burned it with fire that wasn't warp-based. Would a demon servant be able to do that? Chaos uses truth to deceive, Covenant replied. A lesser demon might be sacrificed to establish credibility for a greater infiltration. This was going nowhere. Ben could feel the conversation spiraling toward inevitable judgment, inevitable execution. He needed to change tactics, needed to make Covenant see him as asset rather than threat. What if I could help you? Diamond Head asked. You're an Inquisitor. You fight threats to the Imperium, right? Demons, Xenos, heretics? I've been doing the same thing in my universe since I was 10 years old. I've fought planet-conquering warlords, reality-bending sorcerers, and alien armadas. I know how to fight. I know how to win. And I'm offering to help until I can find a way home. Covenant's expression didn't change, but his interrogator leaned in, whispering something. The Inquisitor listened, then fixed his bionic eye on Diamond Head with renewed intensity. You claim to be a hero. I am a hero, Diamond Head said firmly. Heroes in the 41st Millennium are measured in sacrifice, not survival. In duty unto death, not personal glory. What have you sacrificed for your so-called heroism? The question hit harder than Ben expected. He thought about the Omnitrix, about the burden of carrying it, about the enemies it had brought into his life, the normal childhood it had stolen, about watching Kevin suffer, seeing Gwen endangered, knowing his parents could never fully understand what he faced. Everything I could have been, Diamond Head said quietly. Every normal day, every safe moment, every chance to just be a kid. The Omnitrix chose me, and I've spent years fighting battles most people in my universe don't even know are happening. I've been hunted, captured, tortured, and killed, multiple times actually. But the Omnitrix's failsafe brought me back. And I'd do it all again, because that's what heroes do. Covenant studied him for a long moment. Then he drew his bolt pistol. You speak with conviction. But conviction without faith is pride, and pride is the root of heresy. You wield Xeno's power without the Emperor's blessing. You claim heroism without service to the Imperium. You are dangerous precisely because you believe yourself righteous. The bolt pistol aimed directly at Diamond Head's chest. Inquisitor! Zenith 77 interjected, mechadendrites spreading defensively. Executing the boy destroys unprecedented technological resource. Mechanicus formally requests custody for continued research. Request denied, Covenant said flatly. The risk outweighs the potential value. Caney stepped forward, placing himself between Covenant and Ben. The boy saved my life 3 times in the Underhive. He protected civilians from orcs and banished a demon without sanctified weapons. He has demonstrated courage, honor, and combat effectiveness. These are traits the Imperium values, regardless of origin. Stand aside, Brother Sergeant, Covenant ordered, or explain to your chapter master why you defended a Xenos abomination against the Emperor's Inquisition. Caney didn't move. I will explain that I protected someone worthy of protection. And if my chapter master disagrees, I will accept whatever punishment he deems appropriate. But I will not stand aside while you execute a potential ally out of fear. The tension in the observation gallery had reached critical mass. Tyranids was vibrating with anticipation, waiting for the order to kill. Zenith 77's weapons were primed. Caney's hand had moved closer to his bolter, and Diamond Head stood at the center of it all, realizing that talking had failed. He was out of time and out of options. That's when Ben remembered something Grandpa Max had told him years ago. Sometimes the hero's job isn't to win. It's to make the right choice look so obvious that everyone else chooses it too. Shoot me, Diamond Head said suddenly. Everyone froze. What? Covenant's finger hesitated on the trigger. Shoot me, Diamond Head repeated, stepping away from Caney and spreading his crystalline arms wide. Right now, center mass, use that bolt pistol. Prove I'm a threat by killing me. Because if I die here, you'll never know if I was telling the truth. You'll never know if you just executed someone who could have helped save Imperial lives. And you'll have to live with that uncertainty forever. I live with uncertainty every day, Covenant said coldly. It's the price of vigilance. But you don't have to. Diamond Head's crystal body chimed as he gestured toward the Omnitrix on his chest. Give me one chance. One mission. Let me prove I'm what I say I am. If I fail, if I show any sign of corruption or betrayal, then execute me. But at least give me the chance to prove my worth. Why should I? Covenant demanded. Because, Diamond Head said, the Imperium is constantly at war, constantly fighting overwhelming odds, constantly losing good people to terrible enemies. And I'm offering to be one more fighter on your side. One more asset against the darkness. You can kill me right now and maintain your perfect purity. Or you can take a calculated risk on someone who might actually make a difference. Covenant's bolt pistol didn't waver, but his bionic eye cycled through analysis modes again, reassessing threat levels against potential value. His interrogator was furiously taking notes, documenting everything for later review. And the Eversor assassin was looking confused, a rare state for something that usually only understood kill or don't kill yet. One mission, Covenant finally said. Under my direct supervision, you will demonstrate your capabilities against an active threat to the Imperium. If you succeed without signs of corruption, I will consider your petition for asylum pending Inquisitorial Tribunal. If you fail, or if you demonstrate any Xenos influence beyond your claimed transformations, Theta 9 will kill you before your next breath. Diamond Head's crystalline form seemed to brighten slightly with hope. What's the mission? Covenant holstered his bolt pistol and activated his data slate, pulling up tactical intelligence reports. 3 days ago, a chaos cult calling themselves the Disciples of Change, established a stronghold in Hive Acheron's mid-levels. They've been abducting civilians, performing profane rituals, and summoning lesser demons. Local Arbites are overwhelmed. The cult leader is a sorcerer named Vex the Mutable, follower of Sinch. He's been evading Imperial forces using warp-based precognition. "You want me to take down a chaos cult?" Diamond Head asked. "Aren't those usually huge operations?" "Normally, yes. I would deploy a full kill team, backed by Imperial Guard and possibly orbital support. But this will serve as your test. If you can infiltrate the cult, eliminate Vex, and disrupt their ritual before they summon something catastrophic, without falling to corruption yourself, then you'll have proven you're valuable enough to preserve. And if the ritual succeeds, then Hive Acheron becomes a demonic incursion site, and I order exterminatus." Covenant's expression was carved from stone. 70 billion Imperial citizens die to prevent chaos spread, including you, whether you complete your mission or not. Diamond Head stood silent, processing the stakes. This wasn't like fighting Vilgax or stopping a rogue forever knight. This was infiltrating chaos worshippers who could literally summon demons, led by someone with precognition, with the fate of billions hanging in the balance. And if Ben refused, Covenant would shoot him right here. "I'll do it," Diamond Head said. "But I'm bringing help. Caney and Zenith 77 come with me." "Unacceptable," Covenant said immediately. "This is your test, not theirs. The cult has over 50 members according to your intelligence," Diamond Head argued, reading the data slate upside down with Petrosapien visual acuity. "You really think one person can take them all down? Even with the Omnitrix, I'm not invincible. I need tactical support and someone who understands this universe's threats better than I do." Covenant considered this. The boy was correct. Sending him alone was likely suicide, which defeated the purpose if the goal was assessment rather than execution. And having witnesses would ensure accurate reporting of whether he resisted corruption. "Brother Sergeant Caney may accompany you as tactical advisor," Covenant conceded. "Magos Zenith 77 may provide technical support. But understand, if either of them are corrupted during this mission, their deaths are also on your conscience." "Understood," Diamond Head said, though the weight of that responsibility felt like lead in his crystalline chest. The Omnitrix beeped. 1 minute warning. The transformation was about to end. "You have 4 hours to prepare," Covenant said. "Then we deploy to the mid-levels. And Ben Tennyson, if you're praying to any gods, now would be the time. Because you're about to walk into the heart of chaos itself, and I've seen far stronger souls break under less pressure." Green light washed over Diamond Head as the transformation expired, leaving Ben Tennyson standing small and human in the observation gallery, surrounded by an Inquisitor who wanted him dead, a space marine who'd risked everything to protect him, and a Magos who saw him as the key to technological enlightenment. 4 hours until he faced chaos. 4 hours until he proved he was a hero or died trying. The 41st Millennium was about to test Ben Tennyson in ways he'd never imagined. And somewhere in the warp, Zinch laughed because change was coming. The mid-hive levels of Acheron existed in perpetual twilight. Too far below the upper spires to see real sky, too far above the underhive to drown in complete darkness. Neon signs flickered in perpetual advertisement for products nobody could afford. Narrow streets wound between hab blocks, built atop hab blocks that had been constructed over ruins of previous civilizations. 50 million people lived here, worked here, died here, and never once questioned whether there might be something better. The disciples of change had chosen their stronghold well. Ben crouched on a rooftop overlooking the cult's headquarters, a converted manufactorum that had once produced synthetic textiles, now repurposed for far darker industry. His hoodie had been replaced with lighter armor Zenith 77 had fabricated, flexible ballistic weave that wouldn't restrict movement, but might stop a stubber round. Maybe. Caney lay prone beside him, the Space Marine's massive form somehow finding concealment behind a crumbling chimney. His bolter was equipped with a prey sight scope, painting thermal signatures across his helmet display. 47 cultists visible, Caney reported, voice reduced to a whisper through his vox. Perimeter guards, 8. Internal patrols, 12. Central chamber, estimated 27, performing ritual preparations. Unknown number in sublevels. Zenith 77 monitored from their insertion vehicle 3 blocks away. His mechadendrites interfaced with portable Auspex equipment. Warp energy concentration increasing. Ritual approaches critical threshold. Estimated time until demonic manifestation, 94 minutes. 94 minutes to infiltrate, eliminate the sorcerer, and stop whatever was being summoned. Ben checked the Omnitrix. Fully charged, all transformations showing green, except for a handful still corrupted by previous warp exposure. He'd spent the past 4 hours planning with Kane, learning about chaos cult tactics, understanding what he was walking into. It hadn't made him less terrified, just better prepared. Entry plan, Caney said, zooming his prey sight on the building's eastern face. Service entrance, minimal guards, leads to maintenance corridors. We eliminate sentries silently, navigate internal infrastructure to ritual chamber, strike before they complete summoning. What about Vex? Ben asked. The sorcerer with precognition? Precognition has limits, Caney explained. He sees probable futures, not certainties. We make our assault unpredictable, rapid, overwhelming. Give him too many variables to calculate. Force him to react rather than predict. And if he summons a demon anyway, then we kill it, Caney said simply. You've banished one before. You can do it again. Ben wished he had Caney's confidence. The demon in the Underhive had been weak, surprised, vulnerable to heat blast's fire. A demon deliberately summoned by a powerful sorcerer would be stronger, prepared, far more dangerous. But fear wouldn't help. Action would. I'm going gray matter first, Ben decided. Small, smart, can infiltrate through ventilation systems, get inside, assess their defenses, find the best strike point. Acceptable, Caney agreed. I will provide overwatch, eliminate external sentries if your infiltration is detected. Zenith 77 will monitor warp signature spikes and then warn us if the ritual accelerates. Ben's thumb hovered over the Omnitrix. And if this goes wrong, if I get corrupted like Covenant thinks I will. Caney turned his helmet toward Ben, eye lenses glowing in the darkness. Then I will fulfill my duty. But I do not believe that will happen. Why not? Because, Caney said quietly, I have fought beside heroes and martyrs for 67 years. I know the difference between someone who claims righteousness and someone who embodies it. You are young, inexperienced, impossibly outmatched. Yet you choose to fight anyway. Not for glory or reward, but because it is right. That is not corruption. That is purity. The words hit Ben harder than any enemy ever had. In his universe, he'd been called hero, champion, savior. But hearing it from someone like Cain, a warrior who'd spent decades in service to an empire that worshipped sacrifice, meant something different. Thanks, Ben said, voice rough. I won't let you down." "See that you don't," Caney replied. "The Emperor protects, but he also expects us to protect ourselves." Ben activated the Omnitrix, selecting gray matter. Green light flashed, and then a 6-inch tall Galvan stood where a teenage boy had been, his massive brain already processing tactical data faster than any human could follow. "I'll vox when I'm in position." Gray matter squeaked, his high-pitched voice barely audible. "Watch for my signal." He scurried to the roof's edge and leaped. Galvan physiology handled the 3-story drop easily, landing with barely a sound on a rusted fire escape. Gray matter descended through shadows, his enhanced intellect mapping guard patrol patterns, calculating optimal routes, and analyzing the Manufactorum structure for weaknesses. The service entrance had 2 guards, both human, both bearing the subtle mutations of long-term chaos exposure. One had an extra finger on each hand. The other's eyes glowed faintly pink in the darkness. They weren't paying attention, confident in their isolation, discussing something about the Great Change and how Vex promised transcendence. Gray matter slipped past them through a gap in the door frame too small for human notice. Inside, the Manufactorum had been desecrated beyond recognition. What had once been assembly lines now served as altars decorated with impossible geometry. Walls were painted with runes that hurt to perceive even with Galvan intelligence. The air tasted of copper and ozone and something else. The psychic stink of the warp bleeding through reality. Gray matter navigated through ventilation shafts, his small size and climbing ability making him effectively invisible. He passed rooms where cultists prepared weapons, auto pistols inscribed with blasphemous prayers, blades that wept blood though they'd cut nothing. He passed cells where kidnapped civilians waited in drugged stupor, probably intended as sacrifices. And he passed the ritual chamber. 27 cultists knelt in a circle around a summoning pentagram, painted in what Gray matter's olfactory sensors identified as human blood. At the center stood Vex the Mutable. If stood was the right word for something that seemed to exist in 3 dimensions and several theoretical ones simultaneously. Vex had been human once. Gray matter could see the remnants, basic skeletal structure, residual genetic markers. But Tzeentch had reshaped him. His robes shifted colors constantly, cycling through spectra that didn't exist in nature. His face split into multiple iterations, young, old, male, female, human, something else. Each version speaking simultaneously in overlapping whispers. "Soon," Vex chanted, his many voices harmonizing. "Soon the veil tears. Soon the Lord of Change blesses us with transformation. Soon we become what we were always meant to be." The pentagram pulsed with pink-blue fire. Something was pressing against reality from the other side, eager to manifest. Hungry to corrupt. Gray matter's brilliant mind calculated threat assessments, tactical approaches, probability matrices. Conclusion: they were running out of time faster than Zenith 77 estimated. Gray matter scrambled through the ventilation system back toward the exterior, emerging in an alley where Caney waited. The transformation timed out, leaving Ben gasping in the polluted air. "They're further along than we thought," Ben reported urgently. "Maybe 30 minutes until breach, not 90. And Vex he's not even human anymore. He's something else. Multiple faces, reality distortion around him, probably surrounded by warp protections." Caney processed this grimly. Revised strategy. Immediate assault. No subtlety. Maximum aggression. We cannot allow ritual completion. "Agreed," Zenith 77 added through Vox. "Detecting catastrophic warp energy buildup. Whatever they're summoning is powerful. Category Epsilon threat minimum, possibly Gamma if we're unlucky. Ben's mind raced through transformation options. Heat Blast had worked before, but demons could adapt. Four Arms offered strength but limited range. Diamond Head provided defense but questionable offense against warp entities. Then he saw it in the Omnitrix interface, a transformation he'd been avoiding because of what happened last time. XLR8. But the icon showed that strange purple-green hybrid coloring, the warp-touched version that had emerged when Ben fought off corruption. "I've got an idea," Ben said, "but it's risky. Last time I used XLR8, the transformation absorbed warp energy and created something new. Something faster, weirder, harder to predict. Warp corruption is unacceptable," Caney stated flatly. It wasn't corruption, it was adaptation. The Omnitrix defending itself by incorporating warp properties without being consumed by them. Ben looked at the icon, at the swirling colors that represented something unprecedented. If I go in as warp-touched XLR8, Vex's precognition might not work. He'll be trying to predict futures for something that shouldn't exist in this universe. Caney was silent for 3.7 seconds. Zenith 77. Analysis? Hypothesis has merit, the Magos confirmed. Warp precognition operates on probability matrices calculated from Imperium patterns. Subjects' transformations exist outside those patterns. Combination might create tactical unpredictability sufficient to overwhelm sorcerer's foresight. Or, Caney added, it might corrupt you permanently. We won't know until you transform. Ben stared at the Omnitrix, at the pulsing purple-green icon. He'd spent his entire hero career fighting against corruption, rejected Ghost Freak's possession, resisted the Hybrid's manipulation, stayed true to himself even when Kevin had fallen. This felt different. Not accepting corruption, but weaponizing the universe's own strangeness against itself. I trust the Omnitrix, Ben said finally. Azimuth built it to protect me. If it created a hybrid transformation, there's a reason. I'm going to use it. Then we move now, Caney decided. You breach the ritual chamber as warp-touched XLR8. I provide suppressing fire, eliminate cultists before they can respond. Zenith 77, activate scrambler protocols, disrupt their Vox communication, prevent reinforcements. Acknowledged. Zenith 77 confirmed. Scrambler active. You have communication superiority. Emperor guide you, Brother Sergeant. And you as well, Ben Tennyson. Ben selected the hybrid XLR8 icon, took a breath that might be his last as a pure human, and activated the transformation. The change was unlike anything he'd experienced before. DNA rewrote itself following familiar patterns, becoming kineceleran, gaining speed and agility. But something else layered over it, threaded through it. Warp energy that the Omnitrix had absorbed and analyzed and incorporated into the transformation matrix. Ben felt his consciousness expand into strange dimensions, felt time become negotiable, felt reality thin around his perception. When the light faded, warp-touched XLR8 stood in the alley. Recognizably kineceleran, but changed. His blue-black armor had taken on shifting iridescent qualities, like oil on water. His visor showed multiple overlapping realities simultaneously. And when he moved, he left afterimages that persisted longer than physics should allow, as if he was occupying several moments of time simultaneously. Status? Caney demanded. Bolter aimed cautiously. I'm... okay, XLR8 said, though his voice had strange harmonics now, like speaking from multiple throats at once. I can feel the warp, but it's not controlling me. The Omnitrix is using it, filtering it, making it mine. Can you run? XLR8 tested his legs. The world blurred. When he stopped, he had crossed 3 city blocks in what felt like a single heartbeat. Yeah, I can run. Then let's end this. They moved as one. Kaney's transhuman might and XLR8's impossible speed are converging on the Manufactorum like the Emperor's own judgment. The perimeter guards died before they registered the assault. Kaney's bolter spoke once, twice, painting the walls with explosive decompression. XLR8 phased past guards. Actually phased, his warp-touched nature allowing him to exist slightly out of sync with reality, and appeared inside the ritual chamber. 27 cultists looked up in shock. Vex's many faces smiled simultaneously. Ah, the anomaly arrives. I have foreseen your XLR8 moved. He crossed the ritual chamber in 0.3 seconds, leaving afterimages that confused precognition because they represented futures that might or might not occur. His clawed fist struck Vex before the sorcerer could finish his sentence, sending the mutated prophet sprawling into the summoning circle. The cultists screamed and attacked. XLR8 became a blur of motion, disarming them, disabling them, moving faster than human reaction time could follow. He didn't kill, even in the 41st Millennium, even against Chaos worshippers. Ben couldn't bring himself to execute people who might be victims as much as villains, but he stopped them, brutally, efficiently, leaving unconscious bodies in his wake. Kaney entered the chamber, bolter leveling on Vex. In the Emperor's name, your heresy ends. Vex laughed with all his faces. Does it? Look at your ally, Space Marine. Look at what he's become. Half demon himself now. The change has already won. XLR8 stopped, looking down at his own shifting form. For a moment, doubt crept in. Was he corrupted? Had he gone too far? Then he felt it, the Omnitrix's steady pulse against his chest. The same heartbeat it had maintained since he was 10 years old. Still protecting him, still his. I'm not half demon, XLR8 said firmly. I'm Ben Tennyson, and you're done. He moved toward Vex, but the sorcerer gestured wildly at the summoning circle. Too late, the ritual is complete. The demon prince emerges. The pentagram exploded with pink-blue fire. What crawled through reality was terror incarnate. A greater demon of Tzinch, 9 feet of shifting flesh and impossible angles, with hands that existed in 6 dimensions and a face that changed with each blink. It screamed in voices that predated language, psychic pressure hammering down on everyone present. Cultists bowed in reverence. Kaney opened fire, mass reactive rounds passing harmlessly through the demon's incorporeal flesh. And XLR8 stood frozen, staring at something that shouldn't exist, feeling the warp energy roiling around it, trying to corrupt, consume, transform him into something monstrous. The Omnitrix pulsed, and Ben realized something crucial. He wasn't just warp-touched. He was warp-resistant. The Omnitrix had absorbed warp energy to understand it, to defend against it. This hybrid transformation wasn't corruption, it was immunity. Kaney, XLR8 said, his voice steady despite the horror before them. Keep firing, distracted. Bolter rounds are ineffective. I know, just keep its attention. XLR8 circled the demon at impossible speed, moving through multiple positions simultaneously, creating quantum uncertainty about where he actually was. The demon lashed out with claws that could rend souls, but they struck afterimages, probability ghosts, futures that didn't manifest. And while the demon was confused, XLR8 saw his opening. The summoning circle was still active, still anchoring the demon to reality. It was drawn in blood, inscribed with warp runes, powered by the cultists' collective faith in chaos. But it was also just paint on a floor. XLR8 accelerated to maximum velocity and ran through the circle, his clawed feet dragging across the bloodied symbols, his warp-touched nature disrupting the careful geometry of the summoning. He completed 3 full circuits in under a second, shredding the pentagram with pure kinetic force and reality-distorting speed. The demon shrieked. Its anchor broke. Reality rejected it. The summoning incomplete, the ritual destroyed. It thrashed, trying to maintain manifestation through will alone. But without the circle's support, it was slipping back toward the Imperium. "No!" Vex screamed with all his voices. "We were so close. The great change was..." Kaney's bolter barked once. The mass-reactive round caught Vex's center mass and detonated. The sorcerer's multiple faces froze in simultaneous expressions of shock, and then he collapsed, his body rapidly mutating as Tzeentch withdrew his blessing from a failed servant. The demon screamed one final curse, promises of vengeance, threats of eternal damnation, and vanished in a cascade of pink fire. Silence fell in the ritual chamber. XLR8 stood surrounded by unconscious cultists, a dead sorcerer, and the rapidly fading scorch marks of a banished greater demon. His warp-touched form was already stabilizing. The purple-green energies fading back to standard Kinoceleran blue as the Omnitrix completed its analysis and filed the experience away for future reference. Kaney lowered his bolter. "You succeeded." "Yeah," XLR8 panted, suddenly exhausted. "We did." The Omnitrix beeped its warning. The transformation was ending. Ben let it happen, green light washing over him, returning him to his human form. He stumbled, caught himself, and looked at the devastation they'd wrought. "Is it over?" Ben asked. "The immediate threat is neutralized," Kaney confirmed. "Inquisitor Covenant's forces will secure the site, process the surviving cultists, sanctify the location." He paused. "You resisted corruption, banished a greater demon, completed the mission without becoming the monster Covenant feared. So I passed the test." "That," a new voice said from the chamber entrance, "remains to be determined." Inquisitor Covenant stood in the doorway, flanked by stormtroopers, the Eversor assassin, and a look of profound suspicion. His bionic eye had recorded everything, analyzed every moment of the battle, captured Ben's warp-touch transformation in perfect detail. "You absorbed warp energy," Covenant said slowly. "Channeled it, used it as a weapon. That is either the greatest blessing the Imperium has encountered in millennia." He drew his bolt pistol. "Or the deepest heresy I have ever witnessed." Ben stood exhausted, unarmed, and utterly spent in the middle of a desecrated ritual chamber, facing an Inquisitor who held his life in one hand and judgment in the other. "So," Ben said tiredly, "which is it?" Inquisitor Covenant didn't answer immediately. His bionic eyes cycled through analysis modes, replaying the battle footage, measuring psychic residue, calculating corruption probability indices. The stormtroopers held position, hellguns trained on Ben with unwavering discipline. Theta 9, the Eversor assassin, vibrated with barely restrained bloodlust, combat drugs flooding its system in anticipation of the kill order. Kaney stepped between them, bolter lowered but ready. "Inquisitor, the boy completed your mission. The cult is destroyed. The demon is banished. Vex is dead. Hive Acheron is secure." "The boy absorbed warp energy," Covenant countered, his voice cold as void. "He channeled the Imperium through Xeno's biology and weaponized it against a greater demon. That level of warp interaction without psychic training or sanctification borders on impossible, which means he is either uniquely blessed by the Emperor, something I find statistically improbable, or he is the most dangerous vector for chaos corruption I have encountered in 40 years of service. Ben's hands clenched at his sides. He was too tired for this, too exhausted from the transformation and battle to properly argue. But he had to try. "I didn't use the warp," Ben said, voice hoarse. "The Omnitrix did. It analyzed the energy, understood it, and created a hybrid transformation that could resist corruption while using warp properties against themselves. I was never in danger of being possessed or turned." "You cannot know that with certainty," Covenant replied. "Corruption is insidious. It convinces the damned they remain pure even as heresy consumes them from within." "Then test me," Ben challenged, surprising himself with the firmness in his voice. "You have technology, right? Ways to detect chaos taint. Scan me. Do whatever you need to do. Prove I'm corrupted or accept that I'm not." Covenant's expression didn't change, but something shifted behind his eyes. Calculation replacing certainty. "Very well. You will submit to inquisitorial examination, psychic probing, genetic analysis, spiritual assessment. If you survive with your sanity intact and show no signs of taint, I will consider your case for asylum." "And if I refuse the examination?" Ben asked, though he already knew the answer. "Then I execute you here and now as a precautionary measure." Covenant's bolt pistol remained steady. "The Imperium cannot afford to gamble with potential chaos vectors. We purge the suspect to protect the certain." Zenith 77's Vox crackled from the entrance. The Magos pushed through the stormtroopers, mechadendrites spreading in diplomatic rather than threatening posture. "Inquisitor, I must formally object. The subject has demonstrated unprecedented technological capability and warp resistance. Executing him destroys irreplaceable research potential." "Your objection is noted and overridden," Covenant said without looking at the Magos. "This is inquisitorial jurisdiction. Your input is not required." "Then I invoke Mechanicus Primacy Protocol," Zenith 77 stated, his mechanical voice taking on unusual firmness. "The Omnitrix qualifies as divine technology under Mars Concordat. Article 9, Artifacts of Omniscient Origin. Destroying the device or its bonded host requires approval from the Fabricator General himself. Do you wish to explain to Mars why you executed their claim without proper authorization?" Covenant's jaw tightened. Politics. Even Inquisitors had to navigate the endless bureaucracy that kept the Imperium functioning. The Mechanicus held tremendous power through their control of technology and manufacturing. Alienating them over one potentially corrupted boy could have consequences that rippled across entire sectors. "You're gambling your forged temple's standing on this anomaly," Covenant said to Zenith 77. "Affirmative. The potential value outweighs political risk." Covenant holstered his bolt pistol with visible reluctance. "Fine. The boy submits to examination under Joint Inquisition Mechanicus oversight. If he shows any signs of corruption, Theta 9 executes him immediately, and we dissect the device for analysis. Agreed?" "Agreed," Zenith 77 confirmed. "I guess I don't get a vote?" Ben asked tiredly. "No," Covenant and Zenith 77 said simultaneously. The examination chamber was deep in Hive Acheron's inquisitorial fortress, a place where suspected heretics faced their final judgment. Steel walls inscribed with prayers to the Emperor, holy icons watching from every angle. And in the center, a chair with restraints designed to hold even augmented humans immobile. Ben sat in the chair, trying not to think about how many people had died here. The restraints weren't activated yet. A small mercy suggesting Covenant was at least pretending this was examination rather than execution. 3 figures surrounded him. Inquisitor Covenant, supervising the process with his bionic eye, recording everything. Zenith 77, monitoring with enough scanning equipment to analyze a battleship. And something new. A woman in flowing robes marked with the symbol of the Adeptus Astra Telepathica. A sanctioned psyker, her eyes milky white with psychic sight, her presence making reality feel thin and fragile. This is Interrogator Mystic Sevora, Covenant introduced. She will probe your mind for chaos taint, examine your memories for corruption vectors, and assess whether your soul remains pure. Sevora smiled gently, though her blind eyes made the expression unsettling. Do not resist, child. Resistance causes pain. Acceptance brings clarity. What if I'm naturally resistant? Ben asked, thinking about how the Omnitrix had protected him from psychic attacks before. Will that look like hiding something? It will complicate analysis, Sevora admitted, but we will work carefully. This is assessment, not torture. Yet. That's comforting. Begin, Covenant ordered. Sevora extended her hands toward Ben's head, not quite touching, but close enough that he felt the psychic pressure building. It started as a gentle probe, curious fingers testing the edges of his consciousness, looking for cracks where warp corruption might have seeped through. Ben tried to relax, tried to let her work, but every instinct screamed to resist. The Omnitrix pulsed against his wrist, its fail-safes recognizing potential threat, preparing defensive protocols. Interesting, Sevora murmured. The device is aware. It's protecting you. Not from me specifically, but from any psychic intrusion. I've never encountered technology with this level of autonomous defense. Can you work around it? Covenant asked. Perhaps, if the subject consciously lowers his mental barriers. Sevora's blind eyes turned toward Ben. Will you trust me, Benjamin Tennyson? Will you let me see your truth? Ben thought about all the times he'd been betrayed. By Kevin, by Vilgax's manipulations, by enemies wearing friendly faces. Trust wasn't easy. But he'd come this far, survived this much. Running now would only confirm their suspicions. Okay, Ben said quietly. I'll try to let you in. But if you hurt me, the Omnitrix might react defensively. Just be careful. I am always careful, Sevora said, and her psychic presence pushed deeper. Ben felt it like cold water flooding his mind, memories surfacing unbidden, experiences replaying in vivid detail. Sevora saw his arrival, the crash in the Underhive, the fights with orcs and cultists. She saw Kaney's protection, Zenith 77's fascination, Covenant's suspicion. She saw the battle against Vex, the moment when warp energy touched him, the terror and determination that had kept him fighting. And she saw deeper, saw his childhood, the day Grandpa Max gave him the Omnitrix, saw his battles against Vilgax, his friendship with Gwen and Kevin, his choices to save rather than destroy. Saw his fears, fear of failing, fear of the Omnitrix being stolen, fear of becoming the monster others accused him of being. She saw everything that made Ben Tennyson who he was. When Sevora withdrew, she was trembling slightly. Emperor preserve me. His mind is pristine. No corruption, no taint, no chaos influence whatsoever. She turned to Covenant, her blind eyes somehow conveying conviction. Inquisitor, this boy is as pure as any saint. His exposure to the warp left no mark. The device protected him completely. Covenant's bionic eye whirred skeptically. Impossible. No one touches greater demon energy and emerges untainted. He did, Sevora insisted. More than that, the device he carries isn't just technology. I don't have proper words. Its will made manifest, purpose crystallized into form. It has one function: protect its user and enable heroism. There is no room for corruption in something so singularly dedicated to good. Zenith 77's mechadendrites twitched with what might have been vindication. Analysis confirms Interrogator Mystic's assessment. Genetic scans show 0 warp mutation. Psychic residue readings are baseline human with technological enhancement. Subject is uncorrupted. Covenant stood silent for a long moment, his bionic eye replaying data, cross-referencing against 40 years of experience hunting heretics. Everything said Ben was clean. But his instincts, honed by decades of paranoia that had kept him alive, still whispered doubt. The device protected you this time, Covenant finally said. But chaos is patient. It works through years, decades, waiting for a single moment of weakness. How do you know the next time you use warp touch transformations, you won't fall? I don't, Ben admitted honestly. I can't guarantee I'll never be corrupted or manipulated or controlled. Nobody can. But I can promise that I'll fight it. Every time. With everything I have. Because that's what heroes do. Heroes. Covenant repeated the word like tasting something bitter. The Imperium is built on martyrs, not heroes. On those who sacrifice themselves completely rather than risk even potential corruption. Then maybe that's the difference between my universe and yours, Ben said, meeting Covenant's gaze directly. In my universe, we believe people can stay good even when fighting evil. We believe in redemption, second chances, trust. Yeah, sometimes that gets us hurt. Sometimes villains betray us. But we keep believing anyway, because the alternative is becoming the monsters we're fighting. Naive, Covenant said. Maybe, Ben agreed. But I've saved my universe being naive. Multiple times. And I just saved your hive city the same way. So maybe naive works. Caney had been standing silent in the corner, but now he stepped forward. Inquisitor, the boy has proven himself. He completed your mission. He resisted corruption. He demonstrated loyalty to the Imperium even without formal oaths. What more do you require? Covenant's hand rested on his bolt pistol, and for a moment Ben thought he might draw it anyway. Thought the Inquisitor might decide that risk elimination outweighed potential value, that one more death in a universe of endless wars didn't matter. Then Covenant's hand moved away from the weapon. You live, Covenant said slowly. For now. But understand this, Ben Tennyson. You are now under inquisitorial observation. Your transformations will be monitored, your actions assessed, your loyalties tested. At any sign of corruption, any hint of heresy, any indication you are becoming a threat rather than an asset, I will personally ensure your execution is swift and absolute. Fair enough, Ben said, surprised by how relieved he felt. So what happens now? Now, Covenant said, we determine whether you are merely not corrupted, or whether you are actually useful. The Imperium doesn't maintain dead weight. If you want asylum, if you want resources to research dimensional travel, you need to earn them. How? Covenant pulled up his data slate, scrolling through intelligence reports. The cult you dismantled was one of 17 chaos cells operating in this hive. The others have gone to ground, alerted by your attack. Standard Imperial response would be systematic purge. Level entire HAB sectors. Kill everyone inside. Burn it all and rebuild. 3 million dead? Maybe 4. Ben's stomach churned. There has to be another way. Perhaps, Covenant acknowledged. If someone could infiltrate the remaining cults. Identify their leadership. Strike surgically before they can summon reinforcements. Someone with unique capabilities. Someone who could blend in, adapt, eliminate threats without collateral damage. Understanding dawned. You want me to hunt the other cults? I want you to prove you're worth the political capital I just spent protecting you. Covenant corrected. 16 more cults, each one a clear target, each one an opportunity to demonstrate loyalty and capability. Complete this, and I'll authorize Mechanicus resources for your dimensional research. Fail, and millions die anyway. Choose. It wasn't really a choice. Ben had never been good at walking away from people who needed help, even when those people existed in a universe that didn't want him. I'll do it, Ben said. But I need Caney and Zenith 77 with me. And I need assurance that we're trying to minimize casualties, not just burning everything. Acceptable, Covenant agreed. Brother Sergeant Caney is hereby assigned as your tactical advisor and spiritual guardian. Magos Zenith 77 may provide technical support under joint oversight. You have 1 month to eliminate the remaining Chaos presence. After that, Exterminatus protocols activate regardless of your progress. 1 month, 16 cults, millions of lives in the balance. Just another Tuesday for Ben Tennyson. Except this Tuesday, he had help. A space marine who believed in him. A tech priest fascinated by him. And an Inquisitor who would kill him if he failed, but might, just might, help him get home if he succeeded. 1 month, Ben repeated. We'll get it done. As they left the examination chamber, Caney fell into step beside Ben. You realize he's testing you still. Every cult you face will be harder than the last. He's pushing you to your breaking point to see if you crack. I know, Ben said. But what choice do I have? None, Caney agreed. Welcome to the Imperium, Ben Tennyson, where heroes are forged in fire or they burn. Ben looked down at the Omnitrix, at the steady green glow that had been his constant companion since childhood. 16 cults, countless enemies. A universe that ran on cruelty and called it necessity. But he'd faced impossible odds before. He'd won when everyone said he'd lose, and he'd do it again. Because that's what the Omnitrix had chosen him for. Not to conquer, not to destroy, to save people. Even when they didn't believe they could be saved. Let's get started, Ben said. We've got work to do. 3 weeks into the hunt, Ben had learned more about the 41st Millennium than any outsider should know. And most of it was horrifying. He'd learned that chaos cults hid in plain sight, worshipping forbidden gods in basements beneath ecclesiarchy churches. He'd learned that mutation was so common in the Underhive that people barely noticed when their neighbors sprouted extra limbs or spoke in tongues. He'd learned that the Imperium solution to most problems was overwhelming firepower, and that acceptable casualties was a phrase used with disturbing frequency. But he'd also learned that even in this grimdark future, there were people worth fighting for. The current operation was Cult 13, the Crimson Apostles, followers of Khorne who'd been abducting workers from manufactorum shifts and using them in gladiatorial blood rituals. Caney's intelligence suggested 60 cultists, heavily armed, led by a former Imperial Guard officer who'd fallen to the blood god's call during a prolonged siege campaign. Ben crouched on a gantry overlooking the cult's arena, a converted water treatment facility where rusted platforms surrounded a central pit stained dark with old blood. Below, cultists chanted and howled, working themselves into the frenzy Khorne demanded. In the pit, 2 prisoners fought with crude weapons, neither wanting to kill, but both knowing refusal meant worse. This is different from the Tzeentch cult, Ben whispered into his vox. They're not summoning anything. just killing for killing's sake. Khorne cares not from whence the blood flows. Caney quoted from somewhere in the shadows. His crimson Castellan armor's stealth systems making him functionally invisible. Only that it flows? These cultists are building psychic resonance through violence. Enough death here could thin the veil, allow demon incursion without formal summoning. Then we stop them before that happens. Ben checked the Omnitrix, reviewing his options. Over 3 weeks, he'd learned which transformations worked best against which chaos gods. Heat Blast for Tsiencha's demons, who feared non-warp fire. 4 arms for Nurgle's plagued cultists, who relied on disease rather than combat skill. Gray matter for infiltrating cult networks and sabotaging their infrastructure from within. For Khorne, he needed something that could match their violence without succumbing to bloodlust. I'm going Diamond Head, Ben decided. Durable enough to take hits, strong enough to put them down without killing. We've been through this. I'm not executing prisoners who might be mind-controlled or coerced. Your mercy will be your undoing, Caney warned. But his tone carried less certainty than it had 3 weeks ago. He'd watched Ben spare cultists who surrendered, seen him try to separate the truly corrupted from the desperate and desperate. Some of those prisoners, once treated for chaos exposure and given psychic cleansing, had provided intelligence that saved subsequent operations. Mercy wasn't just naive. Sometimes it was tactical. Zenith 77, status? Ben asked. The Magos responded from his mobile command station. Power grid manipulation complete. On your signal, I will cut lights to arena. Emergency lumens will activate after 7.3 seconds. Insufficient time for cultists to adjust. Sufficient time for your transformation. Caney, you're on Overwatch. Shoot anyone who tries to execute prisoners or flee to warn other cells. Understood. Then let's do this. Ben activated the Omnitrix, selected Diamond Head, and dropped into the arena as green light announced his transformation. The crystalline warrior landed with enough force to crack the ferrocrete floor. 60 cultists turned as one, their bloodshot eyes fixing on the alien in their midst. For a moment, shock held them frozen. Then their leader, a scarred veteran with Khorne's symbol burned into his forehead, raised a chain axe and roared. Blood for the blood god! They charged. Diamond Head met them with controlled violence. His crystalline fists shattered weapons, his body absorbed blows that would have killed a human. His ability to generate crystal shards from his hands let him create barriers that separated cultists from prisoners. He wasn't trying to kill, just disable, overwhelm, force surrender. But Khorne's followers didn't surrender. They came at him with suicidal fury, broken bones and shattered weapons, not slowing them at all. Some tried to grapple Diamond Head, wrapping around his crystal limbs in attempts to drag him down. Others attacked the prisoners, trying to complete their ritual sacrifices before this strange Xenos could stop them. Caney's bolter barked from the darkness. 3 cultists dropped, mass reactive rounds ending their charges before they could reach the helpless. More cultists scattered, seeking cover, finally recognizing they faced coordinated assault rather than lone warrior. Diamond Head pressed forward, his crystal body chiming like bells with each impact. He caught a chain axe mid-swing, the rotating teeth screaming against his palm, and wrenched the weapon free. A cultist stabbed him from behind, combat knife finding the gap between crystal plates, and Diamond Head roared in pain, spinning and backhanding the attacker hard enough to crack ribs. The cult leader charged through the chaos, chain axe raised, eyes wild with Khorne's blessing. You dare interrupt our offering? You dare! Diamond Head drove a crystal spike up from the floor, impaling the chain axe and tearing it from the leader's grip. Then he closed the distance and punched the cultist hard enough to lift him off his feet, slamming him into the arena wall. "I dare," Diamond Head growled. "And I'm done asking nicely. Stand down or get put down." The cult leader laughed through broken teeth. "We are Khorne's chosen. We know only—" Caney appeared behind him, moving with shocking silence for someone in power armor. His combat knife found the cultist's spine, severing nerves, and the leader collapsed, paralyzed, but alive. "Enough," Caney stated. "Your leader has fallen. Your ritual is broken. You have 5 seconds to surrender before I consider you active combatants." The remaining cultists looked at their fallen leader, at the alien made of crystal, at the space marine who'd materialized from shadows. Some kept fighting, too far gone to Khorne's influence. Others dropped their weapons, sanity reasserting itself as blood frenzy faded. Zenith 77's voice crackled through Vox. "Imperial Arbit's units arriving. Secure prisoners for processing. Recommend expedient extraction." Diamond Head transformed back to Ben, the Omnitrix timing out perfectly as local law enforcement stormed the facility. Ben helped the prisoners out of the pit, while Caney coordinated with the Arbites, transferring custody of the surrendered cultists. 13 cults down, 3 to go. The final cult was different. The Unbound Children didn't worship one chaos god. They served all 4, a chaos undivided cult that had been operating in Hive Acheron for 3 generations. They were organized, disciplined, and possessed resources that suggested corruption reached into the upper Hive's nobility. Their leader was simply called the Prophet, a figure so steeped in warp power that even mentioning his name supposedly attracted demonic attention. "This is the real test," Covenant had said when briefing them on Cult 16. "The previous 15 were warm-up. The Unbound Children have infiltrated planetary government, corrupted administratum officials, possibly even placed agents within the Arbites. If you can destroy them, truly destroy them, root and branch, then you'll have proven your value beyond question." Now, standing outside the cult's headquarters, a converted administratum building in the Mid-Hive's mercantile sector, Ben felt the weight of the past month pressing down. He was exhausted, scarred from battles that healing couldn't quite erase, and running on determination more than strength. "Last one," Ben said quietly. "After this, Covenant keeps his word. Zenith 77 gets full access to the dimensional analysis data. We figure out how to get me home. If we survive," Caney added pragmatically. "The Prophet is not like the cult leaders we've faced. Intelligence suggests he's been blessed by all 4 ruinous powers. He'll have their gifts. Khorne's fury, Nurgle's resilience, Tzeentch's sorcery, Slaynesh's speed. Combined, he may be unstoppable. Then it's a good thing I don't stop easy." Ben scrolled through the Omnitrix's transformations, considering his options. Over the month, he'd learned to work with the device's quirks, learned which transformations the 41st Millennium's energies affected and how. Some aliens adapted perfectly, others struggled against warp interference. And one transformation, the warp-touched XLR-8, had become almost reliable, the Omnitrix having fully analyzed and integrated the hybrid nature into its database. "I'm going straight for the Prophet," Ben decided. "Warp-touched XLR-8, maximum speed. Eliminate the leader before the cult can organize. Caney, you secure the exits. Nobody escapes to warn other cells. Zenith 77, combat override the building systems. Lock them in with me." "Risky strategy," Caney assessed. "You'll be alone against dozens of cultists and a multi-blessed champion." "I fought worse," Ben said, thinking of Vilgax, of Egregor, of all the universe-threatening enemies he'd faced. Besides, I'm not really alone. I've got you watching my back. Something that might have been warmth colored Caney's vox. The Emperor protects Ben Tennyson. But yes, I will watch your back. Then let's finish this. Ben activated the Omnitrix, selecting the hybrid XLR8 icon that pulsed with purple-green energy. The transformation was smooth now, practiced, the warp-touched nature integrating seamlessly with Keen-Acceleran biology. When the light faded, something that existed in multiple moments simultaneously stood ready. Breach in 3. Caney counted down. 2, 1. The doors exploded inward. Ben moved. The world became a blur of speed and possibility. Warp-touched XLR8 phased through cultists, his velocity creating temporal echoes that confused perception. He raced up walls, across ceilings, through spaces that shouldn't accommodate his mass, leaving afterimages that made tracking him impossible. Cultists fired weapons at empty air. Sorcerers unleashed warp lightning at positions he'd already vacated. Cornutte berserkers swung chain axes through probability ghosts. And through it all, XLR8 searched for the Prophet. He found him in the building's central chamber, a room that had been converted into a shrine to all 4 chaos gods simultaneously, impossible geometry making it larger inside than the structure's external dimensions allowed. The Prophet stood at the chamber's heart, his form obscured by shifting smoke and warp energy. The anomaly. The Prophet's voice came from everywhere and nowhere. The one who carries impossible technology. The one who resists what he should embrace. You think you can stop us? We are Legion. We are eternal. We are chaos itself. Yeah, I've heard that speech before, XLR8 said, circling at speeds that made his position meaningless. Usually from people who end up in prison or another dimension. This is not your universe, child. Here, chaos wins. Always. Forever. Then I guess I'm about to break your winning streak. XLR8 accelerated to maximum velocity and attacked. The Prophet was fast, Slaanish's blessing granting supernatural speed. But XLR8 was faster, existing in multiple moments, his warp-touched nature letting him navigate probability itself. They collided in a blur of motion, traded blows at velocities human eyes couldn't track, fought across seconds that stretched and compressed under warp influence. The Prophet unleashed Tzeentch's sorcery, reality-warping flames that should have consumed XLR8. But the Omnitrix's warp resistance deflected the worst, and XLR8's speed let him dodge what couldn't be resisted. The Prophet summoned Nurgle's plague, disease that killed on contact. XLR8's Keen-Acceleran metabolism burned it away before it could take hold. The Prophet channeled Khorne's fury, strength enough to shatter Ceramite. XLR8's agility turned overwhelming force into missed strikes. And slowly, incrementally, XLR8 gained the advantage. Because the Prophet, for all his blessings, was still human. Still limited by a mortal body, even enhanced by chaos. And XLR8 was alien, operating on rules the chaos gods hadn't encountered before, wielding technology they couldn't corrupt. The final blow came when XLR8 phased through one of the Prophet's strikes, literally existed slightly out of sync with reality, and reappeared inside his guard. One clawed hand struck the Prophet's chest with kinetic force multiplied by impossible velocity. The Prophet's sternum cracked. His warp-blessed body tried to heal, but XLR8 struck again and again and again. Hundreds of blows in the span of a heartbeat, each one disrupting the chaos energies that sustained him. The Prophet collapsed, his cultists feeling their leader's defeat through their warp connection, panicked. Some tried to flee, only to encounter Kaney's methodical bolter fire at the exits. Others surrendered, their faith in chaos shattered by witnessing their blessed champion defeated by an alien wearing impossible speed. XLR-8 stood over the Prophet, breathing hard, the Omnitrix already beeping its warning. It's over. Chaos doesn't always win. Sometimes heroes do. The transformation timed out. Ben Tennyson stood in the shrine to chaos, exhausted and human, surrounded by the evidence of his victory. Kaney entered the chamber, surveying the scene with what might have been approval. Clean work, efficient. The cult is broken. 16 down, Ben said tiredly. We did it. We did, Kaney confirmed. And now, Ben Tennyson, you collect your reward. 1 week later, Ben stood in Zenith 77's laboratory, watching the Magos work with equipment Ben barely understood. The dimensional analysis had taken days, cross-referencing the energy signature from Ben's arrival with current warp patterns, calculating probability vectors for reopening the breach. I have located your entry point, Zenith 77 announced. The dimensional corridor remains partially open, a lingering wound in reality. With sufficient energy and precise calibration, the Omnitrix could reopen it, send you home. Hope kindled in Ben's chest. Really? You can do it? Theoretically, yes. Practically, there are complications. The energy requirement is enormous. We would need to channel a Forge Temple's entire power output through your device. The feedback might damage the Omnitrix permanently, and there is no guarantee the corridor leads to your exact origin point. Dimensional navigation is imprecise at best. But it's possible, Ben insisted. I could go home. You could attempt to go home, Zenith 77 corrected. Success probability, 63.4%. Probability of arriving in correct universe, 47.8%. Probability of Omnitrix surviving intact, 39.2%. Ben looked down at the device on his wrist, at the green hourglass that had been his companion for years. Going home meant risking it. But staying here meant, what happens if I stay? Ben asked. If I don't try to go back? Kaney, standing nearby in his usual vigilant position, answered, Covenant has authorized your continued operation as inquisitorial asset. You would hunt Xenos, purge heretics, serve the Imperium. It is not a pleasant life, but it is purposeful. You could continue research partnership with Mechanicus, Zenith 77 added. Provide technological insights. Help advance humanity's understanding. Serve the Omnissiah. Or, a new voice said from the doorway, you could keep being Ben Tennyson. Inquisitor Covenant entered, flanked by his retinue. He'd been absent for the past week, attending to other duties. Now he fixed Ben with that unsettling bionic eye. You've proven your worth, Covenant stated. 16 cults destroyed. Minimal collateral damage. No signs of corruption despite extensive chaos exposure. You are acceptable as Imperial assets go. Thanks, Ben said uncertainly. I've authorized Magos Zenith 77 to attempt dimensional transit, Covenant continued. If you choose to leave, the Imperium will remember your service. If you choose to stay, you'll be granted provisional citizenship and placed under my personal command. The decision is yours. Ben looked around the laboratory. At Zenith 77, who'd protected him when it was politically dangerous. At Kane, who'd risked everything to give him a chance. At Covenant, who'd tested him mercilessly but fairly. He thought about his universe, about Gwen and Kevin, about Grandpa Max and his parents. about Earth and the plumbers and all the friends he'd made. He missed them desperately, wanted to go home more than anything. But he also thought about Hive Acheron, about the millions of people who lived in darkness and suffering, about the cultists he'd faced, not all of them monsters. Some of them victims who'd been offered hope by chaos because the Imperium offered nothing. About how maybe, just maybe, someone who believed in mercy and second chances could make a difference here. If I go, Ben said slowly, and the attempt fails, if I end up lost in some other dimension or damage the Omnitrix, then I can't help anyone. But if I stay, even temporarily, I can keep fighting, keep saving people, and maybe find a better way home eventually. So you're staying? Caney asked. Ben looked at the Omnitrix, then back at the people who'd become his unlikely allies in this grimdark future. For now, Ben decided. Until we find a safer way to get me home, or until I'm absolutely certain this is where I need to be. I'll keep working with you. Keep fighting chaos. Keep trying to prove that heroism works. Even in the 41st Millennium, Covenant's expression was unreadable. You may regret that choice. Probably, Ben agreed. But I've never been good at taking the easy path. Then welcome to the Imperium, Covenant said. And for the first time, he extended his hand. Ben shook it, sealing a pact he didn't fully understand with a man who could order his execution with a word. And somewhere in the warp, the Chaos Gods laughed and schemed, because Ben Tennyson had just committed to staying in a universe that would test him in ways he couldn't imagine. But he'd faced impossible odds before. He was a hero, and heroes didn't give up, no matter how dark the Millennium became. 6 months after falling through dimensions into the 41st Millennium, Ben Tennyson stood on the observation deck of Inquisitor Covenant's flagship, the Eternal Vigilance, watching another hive world pass beneath them. Somewhere down there, chaos cultists plotted, orc raiders gathered, Tyranid scouts infiltrated. And Ben would be sent to stop them because that's what he did now. He wasn't the same kid who'd crashed into Armageddon's Underhive. The Omnitrix had adapted to the 41st Millennium's unique energies. Its database expanded with 3 new transformations, hybrids born from exposure to warp phenomena that Asmuth had never intended, but the device had evolved to accommodate. Ben had learned to navigate Imperial politics, to speak the language of duty and sacrifice that resonated with people who'd forgotten mercy. He'd fought alongside Space Marines from 4 different chapters, negotiated with Mechanicus Magi over coffee-equivalent stimulants, and even earned grudging respect from hardened Imperial Guard commanders. But he hadn't forgotten who he was. Lost in thought, Caney approached, his crimson Castellan armor reflecting the starlight streaming through the viewport. The Space Marine had become something close to a friend, or as close as a transhuman warrior could be to a teenage alien shifter from another universe. Just thinking about home, Ben admitted. Zenith 77 says he's getting closer to stabilizing the dimensional corridor. Maybe another year of research, he thinks. And will you leave when he succeeds? Ben didn't answer immediately. The question had haunted him for months. Every successful mission meant lives saved. Cultists stopped, disasters prevented. Every time he transformed, every time he fought, he made a difference in ways the Imperium's usual brutal methods couldn't match. He'd even begun training others, teaching Imperial agents to prioritize intelligence gathering over immediate execution, showing them that mercy could be tactical rather than weak. Small changes, tiny ripples in an ocean of darkness, but ripples nonetheless. I don't know, Ben finally said. Part of me wants to go home desperately. But another part wonders if I'm supposed to be here. If maybe the Omnitrix didn't pull me through dimensions by accident. But because this universe needs someone who still believes in heroism. The Imperium doesn't need heroes, Caney said, repeating what Ben had heard countless times. It needs martyrs. Maybe, Ben agreed. But maybe it needs both. Someone has to remember that the people we're protecting are worth protecting. That saving lives matters more than just killing enemies. That's what heroes do. We remind everyone else what they're fighting for. Caney's helmet turned toward the viewport, watching the hive world rotate slowly beneath them. You have changed me, Ben Tennyson. When we met, I would have executed you without hesitation. Now, he paused, searching for words. Now I question orders that seem needlessly cruel. I ask whether civilian casualties are truly unavoidable. I try to be what you called a hero, rather than simply a weapon. That's all anyone can do, Ben said. Try to be better than they were yesterday. The Vox crackled. Covenant's voice, cold and professional. Ben Tennyson to briefing room. We have new intelligence. Genestealer cult, Hive Tertius, sub-levels 7 through 14. You're deploying in 1 hour. Ben sighed, but smiled despite himself. Another mission. Another chance to prove that mercy and strength weren't opposites. Another opportunity to save people in a universe that had forgotten how. Duty calls? Ben said, heading toward the briefing room. Caney fell into step beside him. The Emperor protects. And so do we, Ben added, making it their private mantra, a small act of rebellion against a universe that demanded absolute faith rather than personal responsibility. In the briefing room, Covenant waited with his usual tactical displays and grim assessments. Zenith 77 attended via hololith, already calculating optimal approach vectors. And surrounding them were others who joined what some called Tennyson's crusade. Imperial agents who'd learned to value precision over overwhelming force, who'd seen Ben's methods work and wanted to replicate them. It wasn't much. In a universe of endless war, a handful of people trying to fight smarter rather than harder was barely noticeable. But it was something. As Covenant began the briefing, Ben's hand unconsciously touched the Omnitrix. The device pulsed steady green, unchanged by dimension-spanning travel or warp exposure or 6 months of constant combat. It remained what it had always been, a tool for heroism, a reminder that even in the darkest places, hope could survive. Ben Tennyson didn't know if he'd ever make it home, didn't know if the dimensional corridor would open, if Zenith 77's calculations would succeed, if he'd see Gwen and Kevin and Grandpa Max again. But he knew this. As long as he carried the Omnitrix, as long as he could transform and fight and save lives, he'd keep being a hero, in this universe or any other. Because that's what the Watch had chosen him for all those years ago. Not to conquer worlds or reshape reality. To help people who needed helping. To fight enemies who needed fighting. To prove that even in the grim darkness of the far future, there could still be heroes. The 41st Millennium had tried to break Ben Tennyson, tried to convince him that mercy was weakness, that hope was delusion, that heroism was naive fantasy. But the Omnitrix had protected him from more than just physical threats. It had protected his ability to believe in something better. And as long as Ben believed, there was a chance, however small, however improbable, that this dark universe could change, one mission at a time, one saved life at a time, one transformation at a time, until either the dimensional corridor opened and sent him home, or until he decided that home wasn't a place, but a purpose. And his purpose was here, fighting darkness with the steady green light of heroism. "Ready?" Covenant asked, finishing the briefing. Ben looked at his unlikely team, a space marine who'd learned mercy, a tech priest who valued life over data, an inquisitor who'd chosen trust over paranoia. He looked at the Omnitrix, at the transformations it offered, at the power it represented. And he smiled. "Ready?" Ben said. "Let's go save some people." Because in the 41st millennium, where there was only war, Ben Tennyson had become something the universe desperately needed but rarely deserved. A hero who refused to give up. And maybe, just maybe, that would make all the difference.